Welcome to the second public hearing to discuss the Richmond County School System Facility Master Plan. First, I would like to thank Principal Rouse and her team for hosting the meeting. Principal Rouse, please give her a hand. Secondly, I would like to recognize our school board members who are present. Please stand or wave to be recognized. And I also would like to thank the Richmond County School System Central Office and staff members as well as principals who are present. Please stand to be recognized. Thank you. Why are we here? This is the time of year we review our portfolio of schools to see if we're maximizing program offerings and being fiscally responsible. I believe if we can do both, then student achievement will be accelerated. Therefore, we have partnered with an experienced educational facilities planner to assist us with achieving this goal. While working with our planner, we have learned a lot over the past few months. The company is HPM, and our presenter is Mr. Tracy Richter. At the conclusion of this presentation, we hope you will be equipped with the same information that we have before making a final recommendation. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. George Diaz from GSG, and he'll make a few remarks about how tonight's meeting will be organized. Mr. Diaz?
Thank you, Dr. Bradshaw, and good evening to the parents and students. First of all, just wanted to make this clear to everybody, okay? Please look at these big red letters. This is a document draft. This is a recommendation. This is not final. So the first thing that I want everybody to make sure that they observe is that this is a living document. And if you were at the meeting last night, you'll also see some changes to how this meeting is run tonight, because we want to be efficient, and most importantly, we want to hear from everybody, in particularly the parents and the students first affected at this school. So just keep that in mind as we're going through the evening. All of these meetings are being live streamed on the county's website, and they will also be available and captured and be on YouTube within 48 hours, so you can watch this meeting also in its entirety on demand as you'd like. There also is a court reporter here, so if you do participate in the Q&A questions, we ask you to come to the microphone over here with your filled out card, and please make sure you state your name first, because this is also a public meeting. Now, let me give you a little bit of a timeline, something that folks really were anxious about last night, and if you have a pen or if you're taking notes, you're going to want to take these dates down. March 12th will be the final public meeting for this proposal. March 19th at 6 p.m., the board will take a vote on the proposal, but only on...
This is our home.
Sorry, that's okay. March 19th at 6 p.m., the board will take a vote on this proposal, but in particular, just the schools that are going to be affected most recently, first in line. I'd also like to read some information here that is regarding our legal disclaimer. Prior to a local board of Education's decision to consolidate any existing schools where the consolidation results in students potentially being moved to another school or existing school, the Board of Education is required by law to hold public hearings and provide an opportunity for full discussion of the proposed plans. The plans that are being presented tonight are proposals only and are in draft form for the board to consider prior to any vote on the plan. The purpose of this public hearings is to provide the public an opportunity to learn more about the proposed projects, as well for the public to provide feedback, comments, and concerns regarding the proposals so that the board members and school officials can consider these concerns prior to any vote on the plan. You will notice that there is also a court reporter present who will be preparing a transcript of all of the comments and concerns so that the board members can review all of the information at the conclusion of the hearings and prior to any vote on the plan. The board members and the school system personnel are here tonight to listen and receive feedback from the public. In order to receive as much feedback as possible within the allotted time, the board members or school system personnel will not be responding comments during the meeting, but rather will be listening and receiving the points of discussion from the community. For any specific questions regarding logistics of the proposed plan, such as transportation routes and special education services, school system officials are here and will be happy to meet with you tonight after the conclusion of the meeting in order to receive those specific questions. So, that's the legalese, and hopefully I was able to deliver it also to you in a conversational form so you can get an idea of how we will operate as far as a Q&A. Now, what can you expect tonight? Before you hear from Tracy from HPM, you'll watch a video that's going to be giving you an overview of the proposal. A presentation with specifics of this school and what could come down the road will be followed before we start with a Q&A session, which we will go over the rules of decorum. If you have any questions, please meet us near the mic and fill out the comment card. State your name for the record. We will prioritize questions for this school first and then allow the questions for other schools. We will have a timer to allow us help get to every question, and please refrain from clapping so we can get to everyone's question. If your question has been asked, please consider a different question to help us have a diverse dialogue, and please keep your questions related to this proposal. As we stated earlier, the school system leadership is available to answer any questions regarding curriculum or special programming. So with that being said, we can start the video and then we'll hear from Tracy.
This is our home, Richmond County. We know its history, and we're invested in our future. These are the faces of tomorrow. Our kids deserve a chance to learn and grow in a community that cares. Our teachers are terrific. Our leaders work hard. And most importantly, our kids are filled with potential. Shouldn't we give them the best? But to do that, we must change. In the Georgia Milestones Assessment, Richmond County Schools ranked among the bottom 10 of the 180 public school systems in Georgia. Our aging buildings aren't able to keep up. Our children are not getting the education they deserve. Change is tough, but new beginnings make way for a better tomorrow, and that is worth it. In the past, we fell short, but we can do better, and we will. We can give our kids state-of-the-art buildings. We can offer them more teachers, staff, and programs. And the state of Georgia will pay for it. But first, we need to adopt a 10-year vision that brings more money into the district, using state funds we currently don't qualify for. Here's how it works. Georgia requires a minimum number of students in schools in order to get funding. Today, many of our schools do not meet the minimum enrollment required to maximize state funding. That means instead of all of these resources, they get just this. That's what we can offer the majority of kids in our district now. It's not enough. our kids are missing out on the things that are proven to help them get ahead. If we keep the status quo, we're leaving free money on the table. We get less than other districts. Plus, we're forcing kids to learn in buildings that aren't up to par. But look at this. Here's what we can offer if we are willing to make changes. We have to consolidate. Right now, we have too many buildings and not enough students. Before the next school year, here's what we need to do. Open new Richmond Hill Elementary to help families in an area where more kids are moving. Opening a new Bel Air Middle School will also balance out classrooms. Building a new Langford Middle School means moving students to Tut. This paves the way for faster construction. We need to close Spirit Creek Middle School. The same is true at A. Bryan Mary Elementary School. The conditions in those buildings do not meet our students' needs. These recommendations came from the brightest minds in rebuilding school systems for tomorrow. HPM informed by a community task force. Together, we created a master plan. By evaluating existing facilities, tracing population trends, finding ways to get more state funding, preserving history while advancing technology and career opportunities. Now HPM is leading community conversations because we can't ensure the future of our children without your help. This isn't easy, but we're going to do things to decrease the impact on our kids. First, we're going to keep as many students together as possible. We're also keeping teachers and staff. Next, not only are we offering brand new buildings to many students, but this will allow others to get much needed upgrades. All throughout the process, we made sure buses will be there. And finally, we're preserving history. We're working with staff and alumni to make sure that's not lost as we work toward a better future. These changes are painful, but here are the facts. Studies tracked test scores, grades, and attendance. They all improve when kids move to fully funded schools with better facilities and more programs. Bigger schools don't mean bigger classes. In fact, it means more art, music, and the ability to learn languages and participate in sports. This isn't just happening in Richmond County. It's everywhere. Families are having fewer kids. Our schools were built for more kids than we have. Old buildings have high maintenance costs. According to the Government Accountability Office, 97% of U.S. schools need security updates. 87% are desperate for better technology. Aging buildings impact housing too. Some neighborhoods which once served hundreds of kids will only have a handful. That's why 40% of our students don't stay in the neighborhood boundaries for high school. We need to adjust our school strategy to adapt to these changes. If not, our kids will only get left further behind. We can give our kids state-of-the-art buildings. We can offer them more teachers, staff, and programs. We can build a better foundation, offer world-class education, and ensure a better future. And the state of Georgia will help us pay for it. But first, we must change. Want to learn more about how this impacts your kids, your schools, and your neighborhood? Head to our website. There you can enter your address and see an interactive map showing the changes needed to ensure our kids keep up. This is just the first stepping stone to building a foundation for the future of a world-class education in Richmond County. Now we'll open up the meeting. First, we'll dive into the details about what this means for you. Then, we'll open it up for questions and discussion. Please prepare your questions and hand them to the moderator, who will give you further instructions.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can y'all hear me back in the back? You okay? Okay, thanks. If I happen to drop this, just raise your hand so you can hear me all the way through. My name's Tracy Richter. I'm with HPM. I've working with the district for the past 7 or 8 months now. When Dr. Bradshaw called me last summer, he talked about the process that this district goes through that's called right sizing. And I was a little concerned with the word because I don't think that right sizing, even though we're trying to align what we need to do, is really the right term for what districts need to be doing. I think the districts need to be doing comprehensive facilities master plans that really try to identify, looking forward in the future, not waking up in August, and saying, hey, we don't have the enrollment, let's close some schools, and let's go through a process like this. So, the purpose of doing a long-range facilities master plan is, well, there's a lot of reasons for it. And primarily the reason is that we need to get our facilities lined up to the right programs and have the right programs in our buildings to teach students. The idea behind academic achievement is achieved in that classroom, but without resources and without full staffing and without the full kind of curriculum that our students demand today to succeed, it's getting more difficult and more difficult. What I'm going to start with tonight is a demographic discussion around declining student enrollment. And what I first want you to know is that a lot of people want to talk about the public school enrollment and the decline in public school enrollment as a fault of the public schools. And I would contend that there's something to dispel that rumor. I do think there's a lot of forces out there trying to kill the public school system. I believe that. Okay? I know that, I work in a lot of states around this country, and I look out of their capital cities and I see more push for charter schools. I see more push for vouchers. I see more push for anti-public. How do I get kids out of public schools? And that's not the right direction that we need to be going. We do need to invest in our schools. There's no question. But when our schools and our facilities allow us to be mismanaged in the way we spend money, invest in our programs, that becomes an issue. And with declining enrollment that is facing not just you, and I know this doesn't make you feel any better, but 90% of districts out there are facing the same issues you guys are facing. Declining enrollment, too much facilities, not enough money to fix my facilities, not enough money to not even pay my teachers, but even to recruit new teachers, or to attract teachers into the industry. So these are the things that a facility master plan can't solve. But what they can do is they can help you align your resources better to get you there. Now, along with that does come some sacrifice from communities out there that, as we look at some things, and what I'm going to take you through tonight, obviously, is I'm going to show you some data. There's no question. But just let's dispel the rumor that it's not that we're not thinking about kind of that human element. We understand how much this impacts people. We understand it impacts staffs that may not stay together, student enrollments that may have been together for a while that have to be separated, administrators who are trying to do a good thing and trying to get there. So we don't lose fact of that, and the fact of the matter is you're going to see what we're trying to do is we're trying to support those better. Okay, and so let me start with the demographic piece of this, because I think this is really important. The first thing that we look at is, when we're trying to figure out how many students we're going to serve in the future, is that first thing we have to look at is how many kids are even being born. And I think that's a big deal, because first of all, we need kids born here to show up in kindergarten here. That's not hard math. Okay, this is the way every district kind of looks at their enrollment. Now, what we've noticed in the past 10 years is Richmond County's grown, and it has grown. But here's the thing, is that even though the county's grown by 7,000, the number of births in the county has dropped by 400 kids. So there's 400 less students or kids being born here, even though there's 7,000 more people. Now, if I look back even further, your largest enrollments right now are in 11th and 12th grades. And look at the birth rates when the years, if you track back 17 and 18 years when they were born, look at those birth rates. Almost 3,400 kids were born here in 2007. Today, it's 2,540, 800 less. Now, if you don't have as many kids being born here, that many kids don't show up here. And so that's how you start to track how enrollment starts. Now, this isn't a good sign, obviously, and so that birth rate drops, and so we see this start to drop of enrollment. Now, this is not the only thing happening demographically. The other thing happening demographically is that we're an aging population. The idea that our houses in a lot of neighborhoods aren't gentrifying, they're not reproducing new kids, and the reason for that is that we 50-somethings that are now having kids that are moving out of our houses aren't leaving our houses. And I will tell you, I've been giving this example the entire time. At 53 years old, my youngest is a sophomore in college now. 3 years ago, I had 2 kids in high school. Now, I could sell that house that's about 90% paid for at a 2.5% interest rate, or I could sell that house, find something that's half the size for twice the money at 8% interest rate. Guess who's not moving? And guess who told a superintendent he's not going to get a student out of my house for the next 5 years? So he gets literally 2 less FTEs out of my household that he just had 3 years ago, and it's happening all through my neighborhood. The same thing's happening everywhere. And so we're not only not gentrifying our homes, we don't have any births coming through, and even in growth times, we're not seeing more student yield out of it. And so that has nothing to do with school performance, nothing. That is just data that we can't control. So if you start to think about what impact that really does have, you think about the historical enrollment and how that works across the district. And the numbers are pretty important, but if you see the color matters on here, the darker the reds, the higher the numbers. And you can see it kind of runs through the years from 2014 to 2023. But what I start to concern myself with is that if I look out 10 years ago to that kindergarten enrollment that had 2,671 kids in it, and in 2023 was 2,186. So a drop of 500 kindergartners that are entering the system. Now, if we project that out 12 years, and we keep every student, that means nobody leaves. You got to stay here for 12 years. That's 6,000 less students in the next 10 years. Simple demographic. Not anything the district's doing, is that there's just no kids that are there to show up. And so as we look at that projected enrollment, and I actually think that what we should do is we should only look out about 5 years, because I can't project the 6-year birth. I can look at 5 years back to see what my kindergartner is going to be. But when I start to look at these numbers, I start to be really concerned. Those blue numbers really, I would tell you those blue numbers, those really low numbers, I wouldn't pay much attention. Those are COVID numbers. So we kind of, when we're looking at demographics, we kind of look at those kind of things that we need to kind of take out of the projection a little bit, and we modify it. And COVID certainly had an impact on it, but when we're starting to look at this kindergarten enrollment, it concerns me. It concerns me that we're not going to get more kids. And my biggest grades right now are in 11th and 12th grade, and we're not going to resupply the schools with those numbers. If I look at the high school kind of historically, and we wanted to look at high schools historically, because I thought this was an important thing to kind of track where your high schools are going to be, because high schools end up being a pretty big discussion in this conversation. But if we look back even about 25 years ago, the enrollment was 9,700. We're down to 8,500. That's 700 in 25 years, not too bad. What I'm concerned with is that we're going to see that same kind of drop in the next 5 years because of the demographics that are coming through. Now, that means that you have a lot of seats that are empty, a lot of seats that the taxpayers pay for. You maintain them. So they can be empty, they can be half full. You still pay the same amount to keep that building open. I also run what we call, and I want you to see all the data, and this is all online for you in our State of the Schools report, our background reports, everything like that. We also run an analysis to show how many students actually live in a boundary versus how many kids attend the school, and where the movement in the district is. And simply how this chart reads, if I just look across at, let's just not, Bel Air and Freedom Park are, they're Cates and all that. So let's look at Glen Hills Middle just because it's a top line there. If I look at Glen Hills Middle across, I can see there's 998 kids that actually live in that boundary. There are 340 kids that actually leave the boundary and go somewhere else. So 34% of that school is actually leaving to go somewhere else. And of that 240, 207 go to another boundary school. They're not going to a magnet program. They're going to just another boundary school. And so as you go across, here we're at Spirit Creek tonight, so let's point out Spirit Creek. If I run across there are 570 middle school students that live in this boundary. And of that, 142 transfer out. A quarter of the students transfer out of this boundary. And of those 142, 69 go to a boundary school. And the others go to a magnet school. Now, it's not my job to place a judgment on why that happens. It is our job to kind of track where students are going, and if that makes any sense in a facilities plan. Now, in a minute, you're going to see what it takes to be fully funded as a middle school. The bare minimum funding is somewhere in the mid-600s. So if you want the bare minimum funding at a middle school building, you have to be around 640 students. So let me point this out, that if I look down in that live-in boundary right there, and I see that, well, and we'll just, because we're here at Spirit Creek has 570. So this is what I'll tell you, that if this district made every student go back to their home boundary and stay in their home school building, Spirit Creek couldn't even get minimum funding for programs. Not even minimum. So what we have to do then is that we have to start looking, well, how do you get equitable programs across the district if I can't get schools to maximum funding? Well, here's what happens. This happens everywhere. Is that those schools that do qualify for the maximum funding can get that full staffing because they have enough FTEs and dollars walking in the door. Those schools that don't start picking off. In order to have equal programs across the board, you have to take away from those schools that get fully funded in order to make sure the other schools have the resources, the same resources. And so in essence, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so not even the schools that can get to maximum funding get maximum funding because everybody else is picking away at it. So in essence, we're cutting down the fence so everybody can see over it. The problem with that is that it defeats the purpose of the fence. And so how do you get buildings to where they need to be from an enrollment standpoint to make sure you get the programs where you need them to be? So our projected enrollment, and again, I would just kind of look out 5 years here. A 10-year projection is what it is, but I really try to focus on that 28, 29, 29, 30 year out there to kind of see where our enrollment will go. Now, in essence, the middle schools will kind of stay the same because we got a pretty steady enrollment, but you start to look at like the high school enrollment, that 8,400 going down to almost 7,400, another 1,000 students. Remember, it took 25 years to do 1,200. It's going to take 5 for another 1,000 at your high schools. Now, folks, here's what I want you to know. That's not doom and gloom necessarily. What you have to do, though, is you have to be somewhat proactive in reacting to that demographic change. And part of that is you can't maintain your entire portfolio of buildings, and you can't continue to maintain that at the jeopardy of programs. And so the simple choice is, and not so simple, is that you can choose buildings and to keep buildings open. That is not my decision to make. That is this community's as a school board to make. And you can continue to stretch those programs across, and you can choose buildings over programs. And many school districts do, until those buildings just take care of themselves. And so we keep stretching, keep stretching, keep stretching. And we can't maximize those dollars that go into our schools from the state of Georgia, and so more dollars have to come in locally that you pay for to supplant those programs that we can't get to maximize state funding in our buildings. And again, if the community is willing to step up, pay more taxes towards that operations, which is a really hard thing to do. Oh, and by the way, I have to go convince 70% of our community who never touch your schools that running a system like this is something they should support from a tax perspective. So how do I convince 70% of people in a community that never touch your schools to continue to support that? That's a tough ask. I think you all would say that's a tough ask. And so you can see it's not a real simple decision when you're starting to think about future facilities. There's a lot that has to be considered when you're in that kind of mode there. Now, I will tell you that people will talk about cost savings all the time. And I'm going to tell you, this isn't a cost savings measure. The consolidation of buildings is not about cost savings. It's about maximizing the dollars you have in your buildings now. And I kind of, it's kind of a little, I don't know, I joke maybe a little bit about it, but it's almost true, is that the reason it's not a cost savings measure is because those dollars get reinvested back into the buildings where they need to be. So you're not really saving dollars. And if I were to go out and tell a community that, oh, we're going to save all these dollars by closing a school, they'd probably laugh at me anyway, because there's not a community I've met in this country that trusts a government operation to spend their money the right way. Even though this board does a really good job financially with the means that they have. And they're trying. But when they're stretched so thin, it becomes more and more difficult to make those and maximize the dollars that they do have. And there's other demands on top of that. And so what a district has to deal with is this triangle. And every district in the country, and this is what makes every district different, is that you have to struggle with this idea of how do you get the most diverse and robust programs that your students need and deserve, that your teachers want to teach to, in the right school size, in the right operating cost. And the trick to this is that you can't have all three, because you can't. If you go through the triangle, you can say that if you want diverse and robust program offerings in small school sizes, it's going to cost you more money. If I want low operating cost in small school sizes, I can't have robust programs. And if I make one more, and if I want those diverse, robust programs at low operating costs, I can't have really small schools that are underfunded. So the trick to any district, and the kind of secret behind any district success, is to try to figure out the shape of your triangle. Not Columbia County, not Savannah Chatham, not Atlanta Public Schools, what Richmond County's triangle looks like. Now, if that triangle, according to the community, wants to be, yeah, we'll take the smaller schools and we're willing to pay more, that's your decision. If we can step up to the plate and get that. Because I do think that everybody wants better programs for our kids. And I believe that to my core. So if I look at the minimum funding, the threshold for minimum funding in the state of Georgia, I look across and I say at the minimum funding for high school is like, and I'm going to show you what this means, minimum versus maximum funding, in a minute. The minimum funding is $970. If you want a full program funding, it's about $1,680. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you, is that we decided early in this program that Richmond County high schools weren't going to be 1,700 student stations. Those are big for Richmond County. And so will we ever get to full funding? Maybe not. But can we get our enrollments to a number that they need to get us closer to that full funding to offer more programs? And what is that number? And trying to maximize where we can and utilize the buildings where we can. At the middle school level, it's $640 for minimum. We'd like to get them to $750 for full program offering. Now at $640, I'm going to show you what the minimum of that means. And then at elementary school, the minimum funding is $450. Now after that, the state gets a little kind of weird on how the staffing goes with how big your school is. But ultimately, in an ideal world for the elementary schools, we'd like to get to 4 teaching units per grade level. That would put schools about $550. Now, $550 might sound like a big number until I tell you once again that's 4 teachers at each grade level. And that's a pretty comfortable teaching environment in elementary grades. At the middle school, that number gets me the ability to do good team teaching, to get the programs I want in the buildings, and not to spread my resources so thin. But look at the numbers. 16 of the 28 don't meet that 450 enrollment threshold. 6 of 8 middle schools don't reach that threshold. And 4 of the 8 high schools don't meet the minimum thresholds. Now, that bottom 10 on the list is a direct reflection of the programs that we have in the schools. It's a direct reflection of we can't get enough FTEs in these doors to support the teachers and the administrators and the support that they need to be successful. And they're working their tails off to do it. So if I look at elementary school and I look at the minimum that if I get above 450 there, it tells me I can have a principal, a half nurse, I can have a media specialist and an art teacher and a guidance. I can pick one of the 3. I can't have art, music, and PE. And so if you do want that, that comes out of your pocket. And most communities are willing to step up for that. If the state can't give us enough funding to get an art teacher and a music teacher both, most communities want that full liberal arts in their elementary schools, and that's fine. But as I start to get below that 450 number, and I can see what that kind of looks like, if it gets below, look, all of a sudden I get a principal, my half principal disappears, I still get that half nurse, and then look at the bottom. That's where the programs go. And so my question continues to go back to this idea at the elementary grade level, middle school, or the high schools, is that if the board decides that they're going to keep buildings open, and again, it's their prerogative to do that, to keep those buildings open, the question has to be is, where's your program sacrifice? How do I get out of that bottom 10 if I continue in the same operating mode that we're in? At the middle schools, if you look at the minimum funding, here, I get a principal, an assistant principal, nurse guidance, art, band, 2 PE teachers, and media specialists. But look what happens in my exploratory. I can't fund a world language or foreign language. I get maybe one CTE, and after that, I'm pretty much done. Now, before I started doing this about 25 years ago, I spent 7 years as a middle grades teacher. And what I learned about teaching middle grades, first of all, I never thought I would be a middle school teacher because I don't think anybody ever thinks they're going to be a middle school teacher, and when they do, they never want to be anything else. And I believe that. But what you love about the middle grades education, it's about exploration. It's about trying to find your way and your pathways to what you want to be doing in high school and maybe even beyond. I can't see an exploratory education at all in there. How do students know what pathways they want to look at or explore if they can't even get exposure to them at the middle school level? Well, they can't. That's the answer. They can't. And you know what they're going to get their information from? Pull it out of your back pocket. It's going to be, they're going to get, oh, I can do this, or I can find it on here. And that's not the answer. It takes direct instruction in the classroom. It takes important teachers and instructors to be in front of them teaching this and to get an exploratory education that your middle school kids deserve. Because they do deserve it. But we can't get there if you see that 6 of the 8 buildings can't even reach that minimum funding level. At the high school level, I hit one too far there. At the high school level, what I concern myself with is that at the minimum, this is what you get. That's it. So everything else that has to go in the high schools that are necessary for high school success has to be then funded through this. Now, specialized programs differ a little bit. Career programs get some more funding because they have federal sources, grants, and things that they can get in the doors. At the elementary school, a lot of our schools rely on Title I dollars to make sure that they can support the resources to get there. And what I love about Title I dollars and what I love about Title I instructors, and if you've ever met one, you know this, a Title I instructor does not walk in the building to take care of just Title I kids. They take care of all kids. And so the more resources we get in Title I and bunch those dollars together, the more resources we get in our elementary schools. That is a great way to think about it. And so in one of our consolidations, last night we were talking about Mary, one of the consolidations was partially going into Lake Forest Hills, and that's just an example. Currently, Lake Forest Hills is around $90,000 in Title I dollars, but if we make this and make a small portion of Mary move in that building, those dollars rise above $150,000 that could go in potentially for that school, for Title I resources. Do you know what that could do for a school building? And the resources and staffing? That's important. That's really important for us. And so to say we're not thinking about programs and how it affects teachers and how it does that, that's exactly what this does. It's exactly what the plan is intended to do. Sure, does it have to be backed by data? Yes. There's a lot of student information back there. There's a lot of facilities information in the background of this. That we could spend, and we have spent time doing. If you were able to attend our meeting in December that we invited the community to, we talked about a lot of that data. And it's all online to see that. And so we want to make sure you do explore that. Now, going back to the point of how we set up these meetings as we walk into the board recommendation, is that we knew that what we're going to ask the board to do is to look at the recommendations for the 24-25 year and to vote on those for next year. And the reason that we're trying to do this now is to make sure that if that recommendation moves forward, then HR has plenty of time to make sure that we're talking to teachers, that we're getting reassignments done, that we're getting the schools in order, we're getting transportation in order. We want to try to get in front of that as much as possible. So, if you don't have a community meeting on the list at your school, it's because we intend to go back to those school buildings that are on the 25 plus years later this spring to go and talk to those communities a little more, to have some more conversations, and that's the reason we put them out a year. We didn't want to make those recommendations yet because we want to have more conversations with the community and see how those enrollment tracks better and all that, but we do know we have a plan for 5 years. You have to lay out something to start the conversation. And so if you didn't see your school name on one of these, it wasn't because we're going to just ignore you and come back next March. The intent is to come back later this spring and then in the fall and keep talking to you so we're not just making this decision last minute. So please understand that. It's not a slight to you. It's just that we've got some pressing needs on these schools that I'm going to show you for the 24-25 school year. We are going to ask the board to consider for the 25 to the 30 year. We're going to ask them just to accept the document as a guidance document for more community discussion. And so I want to be just really clear on that's why we set up the meetings the way we set them up that way. It wasn't to slight any community, anything like that. It was to make sure that we got the schools that we needed, that we have to address right away, and to see if we can move forward on those schools that could be affected immediately. And then to have those other conversations with the communities as we think about next year. Okay, and so we intend to have those conversations. We're going to come out and talk to you about that. We're committed to that, and we will do that. We promise you. We're going to be out in your communities doing this. After this board can make this recommendation, let's have that conversation and get this focused on so we can start talking about you guys this spring instead of next spring. Okay, and we've made that commitment for you. And so let me go over these 24, 25 ideas. So Richmond Hill is currently a K-8 building, built a new elementary school. There's going to be some MPUs that move into those buildings to fill those buildings up to enrollment. Okay, and so then this is a question that gets asked frequently. Well, you're building schools and you're closing schools. And you know what? I agree. Sometimes that's hard to wrap your head around. But I'm going to tell you, this happens everywhere in the country. And the reason it happens is that you do need to reinvest into buildings. That you need to replace old buildings. You need to put buildings where new population's going. You need to readjust some boundaries. You need to readjust where buildings are. That happens everywhere. And so although it's hard to wrap your head around why you would build a building while you're taking down buildings, the fact of the matter is that students are leaving boundaries to just change boundaries in this district. You saw it. 25 to 40% of kids don't stay in their boundaries anyway. So what good would it be to just move boundaries? It's like moving furniture on the Titanic. It's just it'll sink. So you have to make some movements in the district to reinvest in the facilities that need reinvested in. Rebuild new buildings, to put new buildings on the same site. Sometimes it's building one building to close two buildings because that enrollment demands it now. And the community demands a new building to handle 21st century learning. And so that's why reinvestment happens. And so, I know that can be hard to wrap our heads around, but I think every district that goes through that has the opportunities to reinvest in their buildings should. It's expensive to maintain these things. And so we also have a new Bel Air Middle School opening on the west side. It has a Bel Air, Copeland, and Reynolds impact on it. Next year, what we're looking to for another middle school action item is to combine the Langford into the Tut building for 2 years. And the reason we're going to do that is because Langford is going to be a brand new middle school. They're going to build a brand new Langford Middle School that's been kind of on the books for almost 25 years, frankly, and talked about. And what will happen is that in 2 years, the Tut building will close, and then we'll move that entire student population into a brand new state-of-the-art middle school. And so we are able to reduce, that is a reinvestment to reduce 2 middle schools into 1. Okay, so that gets us down now to a fully funded middle school building and 1 less to operate. Okay, and so that helps us. Now again, the idea isn't then just to get rid of teachers and administrators. That doesn't happen. You still need those. They're just pooled and resourced better together. And so I understand that there should be anxiety about, well, is there going to be a reduction in force? Are they going to get rid of teachers, administrators? That's not the plan ever. The plan is to get them reassigned into buildings to continue to teach students. And so because you still need those teachers to teach them, they're just spread too thin. And so if we get them together, and also what happens in districts, and this happens all the time, there's attrition, there's retirements, there's people that move, there's people that get promoted into district promotions. And so there's a good shift of staffing that happens in that process too. And so that's what the district deals with, the movement of buildings plus all these other things that are happening in the staff. Now, let's get to the closures for this year. And the first here we have close Spirit Creek, where we are tonight. Now, the idea here is that we're going to move some NPOs and some NPUs, which are the planning units, and they're sections of the city, and I'm going to show you what those are in a minute, partially to Pine Hill, which would make the Diamond Lakes Elementary 100% feeder into Pine Hill, and then to move other NPUs more south into Hepzibah Middle School, which would make Deer Chase and Hepzibah Elementaries 100% into those buildings. And so one of the first things to do is make sure that if you're making this impact on a middle school, to look at the elementary schools that are feeding it and get those elementaries to be 100% feeders into the middle schools they're going to go to in the future. And so that's one thing that's been done. So those elementaries will have full feeders into those middle schools if this action takes place. So also then for next year would be a closure of Mary. Now Mary is a little more complicated because of its location and the street network right there, but part of it would go to Warren Road, into Lake Forest Hills, and into Garrett Elementary. Now, what this has done in that area, it's taken 4 elementary schools, 3 of the 4 which didn't have enough kids to fully fund their buildings, and got it down to 3 buildings where 2 of the 3 buildings can be fully funded, and the other one actually goes up to about 415, 420, which is just under minimum funding. And so by Mary in that situation, they were able to get elementary schools closer to fully funded. Now, there's a lot that goes into making sure that happens, and I want to make, and this is what I want to be clear on, is that when we're walking through a plan like this, it's not like we're just standing there looking at a map saying, I think it should be Mary Elementary. That's not the way it works. The way it works is we do a profile of the entire area, the feeder patterns, we look at all the portfolio buildings, and then we use some matrices like student transfer rates. We look at how many students live in boundaries. We look at facilities conditions. We look at those kind of things that allow us to make a decision as a whole. And then schools kind of come to the top on that. And so it's not that, because I know there's why us, why us, why us. It's not particularly you. It just falls within the pattern of how you do facilities planning and how all those data points can align. And I'm not going to lie, there's no real, it's not a science that's exact, because it can't be. There's some art to it because you need to make sure that you're balancing some of that. You're balancing some of transportation routes. How can I get kids closer to school so transportation declines a little bit? And how can I get buses to the school on time instead of all these delayed buses? So all those conversations have to happen before any school emerges as a name. And at the December meeting, that's exactly what we talked about. That we don't have any names, but we had concepts about how we can get to where we need to get to fully funded. And so if I look at that, what I want to show you is on a map how this looks. And there are maps out in the hallway too, so I want you to kind of be aware that you can get a closer look at these. But this actually looks at the Spirit Creek, and you can see kind of how the district's broken up a little bit, and you see those numbers in there. Those are what we call the planning units. And those are basically units that look at neighborhoods. They are neighborhood kind of unit planning. And what we can do is we can track every student that lives in each of these planning units, and we can see what our potential live-in would be. And so you see, right now, if I look down here at these 3 middle schools that we're impacting by this move, Hepzibah, Pine Hill, and Spirit Creek, none of those schools can even reach minimum funding with their current live-in. Okay, so none can reach it. So if I make the move to 2 middle schools, you can see my new live-in is 703 and 874. Now, that gets you to at least minimum funding. Now, here's the thing, is that we know the enrollment's not going to be 703 and 874 because kids transfer out of these boundaries. They go to magnet programs. They go to other boundary schools. But at least now we've given these schools the opportunity to be fully funded or to get at least minimum funding in buildings, not fully funded. But we are close, like on Pine Hill, we can get fully funded at a building like that. So that improves program delivery models in order to get there. Now, and also it leaves it at 85% utilization. So the question get asked, what if everybody comes back? First of all, great. But there's no demographic trend that shows me that right now. You saw the growth in the county, and you saw less students, and you saw less people being born. And so something could happen. Gentrification could happen, and all that could happen. But the good news is there's still 300 seats that are available to students among these schools. And that would take a lot of houses or a lot of movement in the population to fill 300 more seats. And so we feel like we've left some room in here to do this, and you can see some of those movements in there. Now, although, because you're just looking at a map, and that map probably means nothing at this point with roads not being easily seen, what I do want to show you is I want to show you the tool that we've provided to the community that if you have a question about where you would be next year, we can show you that. Okay, so Matt's going to pull up on the district website. If you go to the district website, and it's rcboe.org/planning, and it's a pretty easy banner to find in here. If you go to the bottom of this, you can find a link that says proposed school zone locator. What Matt's going to do, he's going to pull up a map, and up on the top left you can find an address or a place. Okay, so he's going to type in an address, and I'm assuming he's probably found something that's close to here. And what you can see that it zooms in and it points to exactly where the address is. It shows you the planning unit you're in, And then if you look at the left, it shows you your current assignment, which is Hepzibah Middle, current is Spirit Creek, and then Hepzibah. But that particular address for the 24-25 proposed assignment would be Hepzibah, Hepzibah, Hepzibah. So it shows you on an address match. So if it moves forward, you have an opportunity to go to this on the website. You can do it on your phone. It works on your phone too. And you can see where the move is. So it's very clear. Now, there still would be plenty of work to do, from coming into the buildings with HR to have individual discussions with staff, with administration, transportation conversations that would have to happen. And so that's how we would find out if you're going to go in that direction. Now, obviously then we have Mary, and I'm not going to go through these really in detail. They were at other meetings, but you can see that we're trying to do the kind of the same thing in these other, and like I said from last night, we got two buildings, 552 and 650, that get to that 4 units per grade level. And Garrett actually increases to get us close to that minimum funding. And so, again, one of the goals was to try to get there. Richmond Hill, kind of the same thing, that even though we're with the movement, we're trying to just move a couple of NPUs in there to get the feeder patterns right and to clean up some feeder patterns and to make sure those buildings are fully utilized. Now, this is for the 25 to 28 school years. Okay, now, again, I want to be very clear that the board is not taking action on these. They're not taking action on these. They're going to review these. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to show them, when we go to the board meeting, we're going to show them the response from the community meetings. We're going to talk about the benefits and challenges that we see from the community response to then consider, so we can go out and start having conversations with these communities. And we're going to start that fairly quickly, but let me go through these for you. Now, the first two are 2 more elementary closures at Gracewood and then Jenkins White. And there's some movement to happen there, and the Gracewood, again, becomes a little more complicated. There's a lot of schools in that kind of surround that area out there, and there's actually, the mileage in between becomes a little more challenging. This is a little more rural part of the county, we know that. But we're seeing declining enrollment, declining population, and so how do you deal with kind of that in a rural concept? And so we have to have more and more discussions with the Gracewood community and the surrounding schools to talk about kind of the impacts of that and what that would mean and why we looked at that school building in particular, because we looked at several. And I think we have some Gracewood folks here tonight. Yeah, hey, thanks for being here. But part of our discussion is, as we start, you're not on the docket for this year to be voted on. But after we get through this board vote, we're going to come out and talk to your community, talk to your school, talk about this process and why we came to this conclusion to see if we can find some more solutions. Okay, so we promise you that. We're going to come out and talk to you all, okay, to go through this. But you can see, I'm glad you're here because you can see some of the baseline of why we got to some conclusions we got to on a more general aspect. Now, the other one is Jenkins White, and Jenkins White is a difficult one. You know, this is an area that has a lot of subsidized housing. The city is tearing down a lot of that subsidized housing, displacing a lot of students. We think even by next year, this boundary can only have maybe 100 or 150 kids in it because there's going to be no housing for kids. And so, but we felt like there was a lot of suggestions. Well, why don't you just do Jenkins White now? Well, we're not going to do Jenkins White now. There's a lot of kids that don't even know where they're going to live next year. But we also know that because they're being displaced out of the subsidized housing, that's going to be kind of knocked down. Now, the city has reasons for this, and that's not anything against the city, but what the goal is to try to get to more livable housing standard. And so that takes some planning on the city's part. I think there needs to be better coordination with the city and the school board to make sure that we have some goals out there if that happens. And so this is going to impact this Jenkins White for next year. Now, we move on to now more of a high school discussion. Now, this one becomes a little more complicated, and it is a little less clear, and I admit it's a little less clear. We had plenty of conversation about that last night, and we had a lot of comments about this last night. So anybody who was there last night, first and foremost, what I want you to know is that tomorrow morning, we're already planning a district leadership team meeting to talk about this again, to see how we form this and make sure we're doing the right things based on the comments we heard. So we're reacting already to this, all right? Because we want to make sure that we're getting this right. Again, the thing is that we wouldn't start anything, and one of the goals was, as we started this kind of why this recommendation moved forward, is that we wouldn't do anything next year because there's too many moving parts, and there has to be a lot of communication that happens to even get the ball rolling on this. So eventually what the goal was to, and this is what the goal was ultimately was to get to keep as many of the high school campuses open as we could, okay? And because when I walked into the district, I heard over and over and over, you're not going to close the high school here, it's just not going to happen. And the problem is you saw what happens to the high school programming. It's just non-existent because we can't get there. And so it's not a challenge to close a high school because that's a really hard thing. It's hard to close any school, but a high school in particular, because of legacy, tradition, all those things. Friday night matters, I get it. And I'm an Indiana basketball boy. Friday and Saturday night matter. Our gyms mattered, okay? So I get it. So we have those legacies, we have traditions. But the problem is that even with that legacy and tradition, you saw some of those, and if you go back in the report, you're going to see the transfer rates of our high school students. You're going to see one school that has 500 kids that leave its boundary. 500. And of those, 360 go to another boundary school. It's not even a magnet they're going to. Those kids aren't chasing legacy and tradition. They're chasing programs. They're chasing opportunity. And so we can hold on to tradition and legacy, and that's fine. That's great. But if it's at the sacrifice of programs and what our kids could be working toward, I personally would hold the line. And so when we think about that, the ultimate goal was to make sure that we preserve as many as we could. I was told immediately, we know you're already going to close Laney and Josie, so why don't you just tell us? Well, that's funny because I didn't say that. I didn't even start yet. And they told me that. So one of the first goals was to kind of look at that area to see how we can invest into the core of the city. And one of the goals was to look at kind of how we deliver a comprehensive career program in this district. It really makes sense, a common vision across the board. We have great magnet schools that have pathways to careers and college. Great magnet schools that can do that. We want to make sure our high schools are that same pathway to colleges and careers that they want and can see. So the idea was that in order to get Josie to where we wanted to get to, Josie we wanted to turn into a comprehensive high school with a career education focus, with state-of-the-art career models. And so the idea is that in order to do that, there has to be a lot of movement across the board. There has to be a lot of movement across the board to get there. And so it starts with this idea of A.R. Johnson to the RCTCM campus. Now, that means that in the interim, that we would have two schools existing in one building. Not a change of the program, not a change of the magnet, dispelling a rumor I just saw on Facebook today that there's only going to be one magnet school in the district. That's not true. Johnson, I know, but that's not what I'm going to tell you. What I'm going to tell you right now to clear it up, that's not true. The magnet program will exist for A.R. Johnson. Okay? Just let me say it again. The A.R. Johnson magnet will continue perpetually until the program doesn't exist anymore 100 years down the road. Okay? Am I going to get, okay, I'm going to get it, all right, okay, so, but here's what's going to happen, and I want you to know our thought process behind this, and I want you to understand why our thought process was. That doesn't mean the conversation's closed, but this was our thought process on it. That in an effort to look at middle grades education again, moving the Murphy and we got the Murphy and, Murphy and Hornsby middle schools to move into the A.R. Johnson campus in relation to the Laney High School. Now, the reason we wanted to do that is to provide some continuity from a middle school to the Laney High School in order to bolster that Laney feeder and program opportunity. When we've got buildings in that kind of adjacency, we have the ability to share resources and programs from middle school to high school back and forth that gets AP teachers and math teachers and science teachers down in the middle schools if we can get them there, because we don't have enough students in those buildings to get the FTE in there. So if we got that proximity to strengthen and embolden that Laney High School opportunity, I'd like to see that. I want to keep Laney strong. I want to make sure that it has the feeders and the ability to grow those programs. So that was the goal in that. Now, in order to do that, the idea was then, okay, we'll move the A.R. Johnson magnet program. It will continue to be a magnet program. Have I said that yet? That will continue to be a magnet program in perpetuity. We'll move that over and we'll share the same building, but you'll still operate as your own school. It's big enough to do that. Now, then, as we look at the Josie facility, we're going to move the Josie students into that Murphy building, middle school building, and we're going to do some selective demolition of that Josie campus. Probably keep the cafeteria, but the old brick and old classrooms, we're going to take that down and we're going to rebuild a state-of-the-art career opportunity high school that's shared with that Murphy campus. So it's going to be one campus now, along with all those great spaces at Marion Barnes. And so what it's going to be is it's going to be a comprehensive school that's going to serve neighborhood kids and have a district-wide choice. So what's going to happen to Josie is that the feeder patterns are going to disappear from it. So the elementaries and middle schools that feed into Josie would not be existing anymore, but the boundary that Josie is in will exist in perpetuity. We call it a ghost boundary. And so students that live in that ghost boundary forever will have the first access into that building to keep it a neighborhood school that has a career focus, but it also has a college pathway. And it gives a district-wide choice to state-of-the-art career programs, which will be a replacement eventually of the RCTC program that will merge back over into that building. Now, this is what I kept saying last night that lent some confusion. What that looks like right now, we're not sure. Curriculum has to go through a long discussion about what the true vision of career and technical education looks like. Have to get that. The school district just finished a report from the Carl Vinson Institute about career education and opportunities in this district. It just got completed to talk about how we start pathways to get that better. Right now, this district can't even generate interest in these programs, in the career programs, because they're kind of spread out a little bit and they're not bolstered to where they need to be. And we need to get a more collective vision on that. Now, the idea then, again, this was our thought process only. And this was why we put it up in the recommendation for discussion, was then the A.R. Johnson program to stay at that building there and in a state and great spaces, and the program has room to grow because it's a bigger building. Now that was the thought process behind it. Now, there's people that may or may not agree with that, and we've heard stuff on, well, it's near the medical community already. We also know that, that Augusta Tech has medical pathways in it too, so we had some thoughts around that too. And so, look, it's not all fleshed out because it can't be. We still have to talk about a comprehensive vision for career and technical education that aligns to these buildings to reinvest in a Josie, to make A.R. Johnson. Look, A.R. Johnson's not going to look the same in 5 years, and you know what? It better not. Medicine changes. It better start changing. We're going to add more programs to it. We want to enhance the program. We want to get more kids interested in that through a magnet pathway. Why wouldn't we want to do that? And so the idea was growth. Now, it just moves buildings. And it allows our middle schools to have a direct connection to our high schools for continuity of a program to bolster the Laney community. So we saw a lot of wins in that. Now, we saw change in that too. And so I wanted to give you kind of a clearer picture on why those are on the list for that. Now, the other hard discussion then is about Glen Hills, okay, and Glen Hills High School. Now, the first and foremost thing that we want to do is we want to reinvest into those pathways. The idea is that we want to replace elementary schools in that area. They're old, they're dilapidated. So the idea is that we replace a Barton Chapel Elementary right now we would move Meadowbrook, we would close the Meadowbrook building, and we'd look down at the Morgan Road, Jamestown. I don't know if you know that, but that's the same site. The middle school and the elementary stay on there. But the idea was to renovate the Morgan Road facility. It's a middle school facility for those elementary kids in the Jamestown and Meadowbrook to kind of feed into that building. Now, the opportunity I see in that is that an elementary school going into a middle school building that has a full competition gym, has a theater, has science labs, has those kind of things, an elementary school would actually have those things. That's a great opportunity for elementary kids who don't have those opportunities. But we'd have to invest some money into that. But we don't think Morgan Road is a long-term investment. We think there's dollars that have to be put in to modify it to house students, but we can't afford it in the next SPLOST. So the idea is that the following SPLOST then would build a new Jamestown Elementary down there on that Morgan Road site. And the investments that we put into Morgan Road have long-term uses. And so we could keep both and we would have a new building there. Replace Barton Chapel, and then right now, the idea was, in order to reduce a high school in the plan, was that we would move the Glen Hills Middle School onto the high school campus. Again, reinvestment in that building, making sure we got upgrades to it. And then move the Glen Hills Elementary into the Glen Hills Middle School campus with some upgrades in it. And that way now, we don't have Jamestown, Meadowbrook, and Glen Hills buildings anymore, but we have better buildings that they can be educated in. So we went from 4 to 3 with 3 less buildings. There's a lot of facility efficiencies in that and better program delivery models in that. Now, the bad news in that one is that you heard that Glen Hills Middle going to Glen Hills High School would mean that in a 5-year plan, 5 years, so we have time to look at this, and I want to be clear on that the 5-year plan would be then to close Glen Hills High School. Now, that doesn't mean the end of high school existence there. What it means is that we're already looking at property and working with the fort on a piece of property on the fort to build a new high school someday. The fort's willing to work with the district to look at property out on the west side where there's growth, where we can get a real diverse population over there. But it's got to be an 8 to 12-year plan for a new high school out there, which then would impact things like West Side and Bel Air and Glen Hills. And think about how that all can be combined in there. But think about the reason it has to be out there as a visionary plan is the idea that a high school costs a lot of money. Like a lot of money. We're helping a school district in Alabama right now that's for 1,000 kids, and it's reaching $100 million to build a school for 1,000 kids. That's ridiculous. And so we have to plan for that financially, and if the vision is to have a high school in the future out there, to create that whole Glen Hills, Bel Air, West Side area and kind of reshape that, because it's going to demand some reshaping with population growth going that way. But we need to have a plan for it, financially, and a facilities plan that looks at it, okay? And if it doesn't come to fruition, then don't build it. So you can see kind of our thought process behind that, and the idea that we have to close a high school isn't a fun one. And look, we're going to hear from the Glen Hills. We have a luncheon with the alumni as a first point of discussion with the Glen Hills alumni on Thursday. And look, they're not going to be happy. Don't expect them to be. But what we are doing is we're holding on to the building. We're not getting rid of the building. And we have a 4 or 5 year plan in front of us to address that. And so we start the conversation. And we start the conversation to happen then. Once again, none of these will be up for a board vote this year. None. Now, there's kind of a more word description so when you get on the website you can see these. The last thing here, I did forget to mention this one, and I won't forget to mention this one because it's in the words here. The C.T. Walker building, then because of the A.R. Johnson move, the Murphy Hornsby, what would be at the ARJ building in this proposal, is that we would look at the demolition of the C.T. Walker Elementary School, that magnet program, and then move it to the Tubman building. Now there's some discussions, and we had a lot of C.T. Walker folks last night talk to us about the concerns about the capacity at Tubman, about the site at Tubman that we need to talk through. But in that, what it would do would clear that site to make sure that we had a comprehensive middle school site with practice fields, competition fields that a middle school has. That way we don't put the burden so much on the Laney after-school programs with the middle school programs too. And so C.T. Walker becomes a critical element in this too, about how do you look at a magnet program and continue to serve a magnet program. Yes, I said it, continue to serve a magnet program throughout and keep it going. Now, does it have to survive at C.T. Walker? Well, if there's a way to do it and it's solutions-based and we don't get in the way of a good middle grades education, yeah, we'll continue to have that discussion. But if we can find a good solution for C.T. Walker that we can come to agreement on, we're going to do that too, in order to make sure that program survives. And so, but we have to have that discussion, and so we'll start that discussion. And so C.T. Walker becomes an important discussion in this too. But dollars get associated with this when you demolish buildings, when you reinvest in fields and all those things. But what we were going for is comprehensive middle grades education on a site to go along with the high school. And so those are the thought processes behind where we got to. I don't expect that consensus will come. And then, again, these are just kind of the maps that you can go to and see. We're going to continue to have these meetings, okay? We're going to be tomorrow night we're going to be at Tut Middle School, and then we're going to go to Richmond Hill on Thursday, and then on Monday we're going to go to Bel Air. And then there's a 3 p.m. meeting at the central office to, again, have the first reading of this to the board. And then there's a 6 p.m. action meeting then on the 19th. Now, we've had some discussion on why 3 o'clock. Well, We understand that there's people out there on second shifts, third shifts that can't come to these meetings too. We want to make sure that there's an opportunity there for them to come and speak. We've had some opportunities here to speak to us and hear our voices at these tonight and in the next few nights. And then the regular board meeting for action on the 19th. So that's a plan moving forward on this. Again, those 25 and beyond, we'll talk about the response we got from the community at those, and we'll look at the board and we'll say, okay, this is our roadmap. Just right now, this is just the roadmap. And they can take that as they will, but no vote on that, okay? So with that, George, are you gonna kind of give the instruction of where we go from there? Yep. Okay, well, let me just very quickly say, I know that's a lot and I took a little time. And I appreciate the patience and the grace to be able to listen through that and hear at least our reasoning behind why we got to get to where we got to. Okay, George's gonna tell you how we're gonna do the rest of the night as far as comments and questions go, and then we'll go.
So as we shared initially, first we want to prioritize any parents that are Spirit Creek parents or have students here. So out of the folks that have requested the cards so far, are any of you Spirit Creek parents or students? That's fine. Are there now any parents that are from Spirit Creek that would like to ask a question that maybe didn't receive a card when we were passing them out? Okay, you can make your way up here, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. With that being said, as she's making her way up here, we'll give her the floor first, and then we'll also make a few more announcements and give anybody an opportunity from Spirit Creek. So don't feel that this is your only opportunity. We will prioritize you if you have a question. In the meantime, while she's filling out her card and getting that together, don't forget that when you come up here and speak, please state your name so they can put it in the record. Additionally, now out of the folks that have the cards, are there any folks that have the cards that have not spoken at a meeting yet? So for example, yes ma'am, go ahead, you can come on up here. If you have not spoken at a meeting yet, make your way up here. So if you were at the meeting last night and you spoke, let's give these folks an opportunity first, and then we will move on with the next set of folks. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'll come by you. I got you. No worries. And we'll do that. In the meantime, we'll pass out some additional cards. I'll come to you, and I'll come to you, ma'am, and then we'll start with this young lady, and then after that, we'll just go down the line. There will be a timer tonight.
I don't think we're going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we can knock, y'all can take out the timer. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
So the other piece to this is that what you might not be used to is that any questions up here that I can address based on the facilities plan, I'm going to answer. I'm going to try to answer the best of my ability, so it's just not something that you feel is going to drop to the end of the microphone, okay? If I can answer your question, I will. Again, if it's a more operational issue, I'm going to help defer you to the people that can answer your questions, though. Okay, so I'm glad to answer your questions when you ask, though. Yes, ma'am. Oh, what's that? You just want to hand me your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you want me to read it then?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, so her question is demo of CT Walker. If CT Walker meets or exceeds the 450 requirement, for national school and highly awarded, why demo? Okay, so I think it's a good question. I think the original premise for that was that in order to, with facilities available for magnet programs in the district that the district still owns, the idea was to make sure the site was appropriate for middle grades education for the Murphy and the Hornsby. That was the original thought for that, okay? It doesn't have anything to do with fully funded, anything like that. It has something to do with some building condition, if we want to get the right building, the right capacity, and the right space for those students. So it didn't have to do with enrollment necessarily. It was more about making sure we got the middle school, a fully enhanced middle school program at that site, knowing that we had buildings in the district that had available space that were empty, that are good facilities still for the CT Walker program. And we'll still have discussion around those, okay? And we will. Well, I can completely see that, okay? So then there's some people that won't agree with that. But it didn't have to do with enrollment. It didn't have to do with that. It was more about really getting that program to where we need to get to. Okay.
Is it on? Okay.
Hi.
I'm Dr. Caroline Whitcomb. I'm a teacher here at Spirit Creek, but my question isn't so much tied to the creek. It's more tied to the population predictions that you were doing.
Yeah.
You know, I think with the cybersecurity and with Dr. Biden's choosing Augusta as one of those 5 hubs and promising more jobs and more influx of people moving in, specifically into that area where that new factory, the clean energy factory, is being built. But with those two things both happening in Richmond County, I'm wondering, like, is that data correct? I mean, to me, it sounds like there's going to be an influx of people into this area, and those with young people with families and people that are starting careers and that sort of thing. So did y'all take that into consideration is my question.
Sure, and I think that's a really good question. The predictability of population that moves in because of an impact like that is something that you really have to pay attention to. Now, here's the thing, is that first and foremost, you're going to be competing against other school districts for people that work there. Okay? And so to increase enrollment by the number you need to get to, it's going to be a magnitude. You can see the current enrollment, you can see the current population growing now, and still a decline in birth rates. You're going to be competing against other county school system, Columbia County, and some other private offerings. And so certainly you pay attention to that, to the influx of that enrollment that might come in because of that. Now, the one thing I can't do is I can see what's there. But currently there's no planned unit developments, there's no kind of housing that's predicted because of it. But when we see that, we can make adjustments to this. And again, the good news is that we're trying to keep enough capacity. We're not trying, we are keeping enough capacity in these schools to make sure that we can handle the more influx. So we will continue to monitor that for sure. And look, I hope it happens. But we're going to have plenty of space to accommodate those students that come in. But it would take a big population increase to even get 300 middle school students back. Okay? I hope that helps a little bit. We'll continue to monitor, I promise that. So I'm here for the long haul. We're going to track student enrollment, we're going to track birth, we're going to track housing, we're going to track industry, we're going to track all of it to make sure we're keeping up with this. Okay? Thanks for the question. Hi.
Hi, my name is Eugene C. Resendiz, and my child goes to A.R. Johnson. I have a couple questions regarding right now that, knowing that ARJ, it's part of AU, and they work in partnership together.
Sure.
It's a reality that a lot of the students are going to continue to be in the medical fields and choosing that field. How is the relocation to RCTCM with this, which is 6.8 miles or 2.5 hours walking from the medical district, where a lot of these students volunteer at the Blue Goose, at AU, at the VA, so on and so forth. So how is the transportation or the location going to affect versus right now ARJ is only 0.7 miles or 16-minute walking distance. It's my understanding that there isn't any transportation with the way things are. How are they going to plan on being able to give these children the OJT that they need in order to continue to serve our community?
Okay, so I mean that's one of the things that we discussed about making sure that relationship won't go away, first of all. Mm-hmm. Okay, the continued partnership would happen. You do have to figure out the logistics of how that does work. And so are there opportunities? So there's more than one solution other than getting kids there. Is there an opportunity to make sure we accommodate space at the facility where the professionals can come into the building to teach more kids and have more access? Or is there a transportation network that can transport kids back and forth when they need to attend into those buildings? And so there's all kinds of different ways to approach it. Hold on a second. Look, what's not productive, I'm going to tell you, what's not productive is yelling from the crowd where nobody hears you. And you can, but it's just not productive. We can hear, if you want a question or comment, I'm glad to take your comment here. Okay, but I want to hear and I want to try to explain our logic behind that reasoning. And there are ways you can do that. You can ignite the partnership more. You can invite professionals into the building to have more access to more students. There's plenty of pathways to keep a partnership open. We understand the difference in the site. We know that's a challenge in this one. And so I think it's something that we have to address. And so I think it's a really fair question to ask on this one.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Shirley Coleman.
Hi, Shirley.
And I am the parent of a student who attends RCTCM.
Okay.
And I am very concerned,
Okay.
as she is very concerned.
Mm-hmm.
She's anxious about all of the chatter and the possible closure of her school and going down to Josie.
Mm-hmm.
she is in the cyber pathway.
Yep.
So you haven't spoken about the cyber pathway. So I have questions about that. What is that? I know you're talking about numbers and buildings, but what will that look like for the cyber program?
Okay, I think, well, the cyber program is a very successful program. And unfortunately, we're not attracted enough students to it yet. Okay, and so one thing we want to do is grow that program. Now, first and foremost, there's a 3-year track for any of that to change. Okay, so I don't know what year your daughter is, but there's a 3-year track because we're not making a move. If we were to make a move, we would first have, it's a year before we make a move of ARJ in, and then it's another couple of years to get the Josie campus built. So we've got a pathway for that, a time to talk about those program offerings. Now, it's programs like that that we want to continue to enhance. And so if an ARJ is to stay at the RCTCM campus, I'm not saying RCTCM is going to go away, okay? How it currently looks, we want to bolster the programs there, and we want to get them into good, appropriate spaces that might have connections to a comprehensive high school, okay? And so that was the idea of taking RCTCM. And again, what's hard to explain, and I don't know why I can't make it clear, is that the RCTCM program will evolve also. Cyber will get bigger and broader. And how do we support that more and more? And so we have to pay attention to that. We have to pay attention to how that relates to other career-related programs so students have opportunity to see different pathways in cybersecurity and cyber to go into other career pathways. That's the goal of that kind of Josie, Marion Barnes kind of concept in a comprehensive high school. But the idea is to still have a choice school to go to in that. So the program's not disappearing necessarily. It's going to look a little different because it's going to have more to it. And then, but that eventually, right now, the plan would be to go to the Josie campus on that. And so, but that's a 3-year out.
Right.
Okay?
Right. I understand that.
Yes.
But looking at the numbers, and you were saying that initially, okay, in 25, 26, that TCM and ARJ will be in the same building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
For 25, 26. And then 26, 27, they're going to be in the same building another year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then 27, 28, you're proposing to move TCM down to the Josie facility, right? So, and basically, TCM will kind of dissolve, is what I'm hearing?
No. Please, let me be very clear on that. TCM will not dissolve. It's going to relocate as a bigger and better program. The core of RCTC will always be there, okay? Now, obviously, those programs change a little bit over time because that's the way career education works, and even in technology that works. Okay, so the core of RCTC will still exist. It'll just be at the other building in a brand new state-of-the-art career center building, and that was the goal of it. So the program's not going away. Okay, let me be very clear on that. The core of the program will always be there. But what we do know, and take this in the right way, it's going to change for the better. We're going to add more to it so they have more pathways within those career pathways they already have. That's the idea of change of a program. It has to grow. It has to evolve. Right now, we're not attracting enough kids there. So we need to figure out how we get kids into this very successful program, by the way. I mean, obviously, your daughter's there for a reason. And the kids that go there know that. I don't think it gets enough attention, frankly, especially compared to magnet offerings. So I think that we find a way that we can get more students involved in this and show them the pathways for it and be a very successful program. And it already is, but grow that success. That's our goal. To grow the success.
And I like that.
Okay.
But I would hope that growth could take place at its current building.
Okay.
I mean, if they
That's
can
fair.
stay there for 2 years together and get a symbiotic relationship going and some synchrony going there with their programs and pathways between the two high schools, I think they all will blossom and do better.
Okay, we'll definitely consider that. I mean, I think there are ways, honestly. I think that there's ways to enhance an A.R. Johnson program and your program in a synchronous way.
Right.
Now, do they get better? I don't know. I mean, but I think that we need a curriculum discussion around that, along with the community, and working with the community to do just exactly what you just said. Are there collaborating pathways that complement each other? We should explore that.
Okay.
To give all, I agree with that. So I appreciate that comment a lot, because that's the vision.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for
And
that.
one more statement
Yes.
about Josie.
Yes.
I mean, I grew up in that neighborhood, so I have a love for Josie.
Sure.
But I have a concern for safety.
Okay.
Just this school year alone, in August,
Okay.
there was a shooting
Yeah.
at the school where a student was injured. And in February, there was another violent incident. So you're talking about, and what I heard, referring back to slide number 25, which kind of was a blur to me, with what you're proposing, because TCM has sixth graders, so you're talking about 11, 12-year-old students potentially going into Josie,
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
And right now, TCM is, you get in by taking a test
Yep.
and applying.
Sure.
So you're saying you're going to put TCM there. Students don't have to apply. They don't have to take a test. The neighborhood schools are basically grandfathered in, so anyone who wants to go would have the opportunity to go at Josie, the Marion Barnes Center, which
Sure.
I think is a great opportunity,
Okay.
and they need that. But again, my concern is about safety.
Sure.
When Murphy was there at Josie, there were walls that separated those schools, from the middle school to the high school. There will be, you're not talking about any separation between these students. To me,
Yep.
this is what I feel
Yep.
when I saw your slide. I felt like a dump. You're dumping our babies there, and you're lumping them all together. And anyone who, wants to come, they just come. And there's no restriction.
Yeah, no,
You see what I'm saying?
I perfectly understand that. And again, I think there's an evolution of admittance into that building, obviously, whatever that means. If it's interest-based, is it test-based, whatever it is. I myself think about that 6 through 8 education model also. And I think there has to be a real healthy discussion around that 6-8 model for the magnet for a career pathway. And so I don't think we're their curriculum yet. And so what we have to work through is exactly what you just said. I've shared the same concerns about if we remain a 6-12, how does that really work? Because they need a comprehensive middle grades education also, not just in a pathway and separation too. And frankly, it wouldn't be enough middle grades population to offer a full, robust middle grades education. So I think we have to have some discussion around it. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not that it was forgotten. Again, there's a lot of stuff I have to go through to try to get there. That 6-8 is a critical element of a decision making in this process. And we've got to solve it for that.
Okay, my last
Yes, ma'am.
statement.
Yeah.
My suggestion
Yes, ma'am.
is that when you get to that point, when you're ready to, and it's been voted on, that TCM will go down to Josie, just like you did for C.T. Walker, offer those students. When C.T. Walker Middle School, the middle school portion closed, they offered those students a path forward to any magnet program in Richmond County without testing, without applying.
Okay.
They just needed to say, this is where I wanted to go.
Okay.
So my suggestion is to help those parents who have been molding and working with their students to get them to, great careers, great futures, to offer those students, those parents, that same opportunity.
Okay, I like it. I mean, consistency in that policy is a good one. So I appreciate that input on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Carrie Levitt. I'm a teacher here at Spirit Creek Middle School.
Hi, Carrie.
And I've been here since the school started. And this isn't really a plea to keep it open, but it is.
Okay.
I would love to see the school stay open because we've done some awesome things here. We have a lot of trailblazers here. We have a lot of good things that have been going on at Spirit Creek and continue to go on at Spirit Creek and will continue to go on if you keep the school open. But my question is this. When I saw the slides up there about more students at a school or the lower costs or the more costs it would cost, I was concerned too about we're trying to make our scores get higher and higher. So to me, I'm wondering, from data that I've seen and I've read about, the less people in a classroom or students in a classroom, you will see that growth. So I'm wondering right now, my question is, do the proposed numbers for middle schools predict classes to be at maximum capacity, which is probably 32 students? And I'm still wondering, will it be even more than that? Because if we're putting more students in schools, I'm very, very concerned. Will our growth, will it go up? Or will it just go down? Because we are concerned with behavior problems as well.
Sure. Okay. Let me answer the question on class size and school size. Okay. Because I think that's an important clarification. And I've said this several times, but understand there's no correlation between a school size and a class size. And the reason for that, a school can be 2,000 kids and still have class sizes of 15. Okay. Now, that's not the way schools operate because we do see fluctuations of demographics, enrollments, cohorts go through. But what I do know is that if we were to balance our enrollment better, we would have more consistent class size. That we wouldn't go in these fluctuations of different cohorts of I get a big class or a small class. And so I can actually level that. Actually, whatever research shows on class size, and it's such a circular research argument, but the bottom line is that if we can maintain good consistent class size that doesn't put 35 in a classroom and then 12 the next period or whatever it is, we're better off doing that. And so we don't want to do that. Okay, the idea is when we see those enrollments was we figured the capacity to be those maximum class sizes, and that's it. Now, there has to be a decision at some point when a building does exceed its capacity. And let me make one more point. Actually, in 25 years of doing this, what I've discovered is that the really small schools actually suffer with class size more. And the reason for that is there's not enough FTEs walking in the door to support how many kids you got in there. And so your class sizes actually go up in really small schools. And so that's an issue. Now, if we get, and again, what we don't want to do is build the schools so big. I know there's safety concerns. I know there's that too. So I hear that, and I completely agree. Unfortunately, what I can't do is that the position I can put the district in is allowing you enough facilities to handle the enrollment that you have with some growth and some fluctuation. What I can't do is operate the building. And as you know, you've been here long enough to probably see 7 or 8 different principals. And they all operate a little differently and how they run a building and what goes on in a building. I can't control that piece of it. And I do know that we have to pay closer attention to those safety concerns that we do have. And so a lot of that's an operational issue. Certainly the building, the facilities department is making investments into more security, double entry vestibules where they can, and better camera systems, better lockdown systems, those kind of things where they can. And so I hear that, and I appreciate your plea for this school, because I'm glad somebody came up and made that plea for this school, because that's important to me. So thank you for that. That's where the clap. You can clap for that one. I'm okay with that. But so with that being said, so let's not, as far as class size, the intent is to balance, okay, as best we can. Safety, I do think it's a concern. But I think it's a concern regardless of your school size. And so making sure that we invest in the buildings the right way. I wish we could do this better for middle schools. I do. Right now we're losing kids at middle school, and we're not maintaining enrollment, okay? And so I want to make sure we try to hold on to that. I hear your concerns, and thank you for standing up tonight for this school. I really appreciate that. I know it's not easy to always stand up in front of a crowd to do this, but it's worth the effort. We're going to continue. We'll have this discussion again, just noted.
Okay.
We'll
I do have other
Please do.
questions,
Come on. Yeah,
no,
please.
but out of respect for the others, I'm going
please.
to go ahead and take my seat. I will be at the other meetings as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
As we pass out those additional cards, were any of those cards Spirit Creek related? All right, that's fine. If your question was not Spirit Creek related and you did not speak at last night's meeting, you can make your way up here. We'll give you the opportunity, and then we'll go ahead and move to the folks that spoke last night. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Alexis Dubuque.
Hi,
I
Alexis.
have 2 children within the school system,
Okay.
one in C.T. Walker and one in A.R. Johnson. I have a few questions.
Sure.
First of all, today, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't receive any letters, any emails talking about any of this. All of a sudden, about last week, my student texted me from A.R. Johnson saying, hey, there are rumors going around saying that A.R. Johnson's going to be no more, that C.T. Walker's going to be bulldozed. So why is it that my kid is coming to me first and not the school system?
So that I can't answer why you wouldn't get that communication.
Yeah.
I really can't.
And I know there are a lot
Yeah.
of parents who have
Okay.
no clue about this and have no clue that even this is even going on. So that needs to be, I think, dealt with.
Okay. Okay.
Just a couple things. Since the inception and since this was made public, the website has been completed and has been put up there. All of the dates, as soon as they were made public, were put on the website. There have been multiple public meeting advisories sent out to all of the media and all of the school list. And yes, they were, and we have the record for them. I would be glad to show them to you. And multiple news articles that were written through the Augusta Press, the Augusta Chronicle, but both of their reporters are here. They can give you the dates. So we have push the boundaries of exposure. If you look at the social media accounts for the school system, you'll even be able to see the responses that people gave to them. None of this has been secret. None of it has been hidden. It has all been reported and
Sorry, since you took it from me as well. Yeah, but still, we did not. You can say that you posted it
Noted.
online.
Noted.
Who checks the
Noted.
Richmond County school system like that?
Okay.
Yeah, great, awesome. So today, because I found out about that, I spoke to somebody at the Richmond County. She said she was the superintendent, so I have no clue. But she told me that A.R. Johnson will no longer be in middle school after 1 year of being at TCM. And that once the kids are at Josie, that it will become a choice school and not a magnet school for, I guess, the kids that are from A.R. Johnson that go there. I have no clue.
So you
That's what she
talked
told me.
to somebody at the district?
Yes.
Okay, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
like, you don't have to say who the person was here, but if you have that name.
I have her phone number. They gave it to me, and that's the phone number.
So we don't
I
have
called.
to, like.
No, yeah, I can give it to you on the off.
Yeah, and talk to me offline on that
Yeah.
one.
And
Because what I want to be sure, what you just heard, and I've made this very clear, is not the truth. Okay? So
Yeah,
so
I
I
just
have
wanna
tried
make
to
sure.
make it
That's
clear.
why I'm
So I
asking
appreciate
again
that.
for
I do,
clarification.
and that's why
Yeah.
afterwards I want to talk to you because I want to make
Yeah.
sure that people are informed even internally that are giving you information.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's my issue with that.
Okay, I
It's
agree.
like-
That
'cause
would
you
be an
did-
issue.
You did touch on it earlier,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I was like, wait up, I got something completely different.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure.
I
So
appreciate
A.R.
that.
Johnson will continue to be a magnet school.
6 through 12.
Okay, great. And also she told me that C.T. Walker will no longer be a magnet school.
No, that is not true.
Okay. And so where are they? They're going to be going to Tubman?
Yeah, so that's what we're advising right now.
Okay.
Again, we've got a year before the move will even be
Yeah.
made. And
But
so, yeah,
once
that would
they
be-
go there,
yeah.
it will be what?
The magnet school, the magnet
The
elementary,
magnet
yes.
school,
It'd be a
elementary.
CT
Okay.
Walker program at the Tubman building. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I know you guys talked about class sizes.
Yeah.
And, if we have all these students in these schools, this is what we can offer. Art, music, choir, PE classes, and stuff like that, right? I come from California. I come from a pretty big school that offered all those things, state of the art, all the good stuff that he's talking about. I came from a school like that, and I can tell you right now, I came from classes 30 to 40 people deep. I did not get a good education. Yeah, I was exposed to music, art, choir, etc. But no, there are still things to this day that I cannot do because I was in such a huge class. So I
again,
do not
what-
like the.
Now, I'm going to tell you, hold on one second, because I want to set it clear. Class size is an operational issue. It's not a facility issue. So if you're the administration, and here's what happens. This is the first thing that happens in school districts. When you don't have the money, the first thing to go is busing. The second thing to go is staff, because 86% to 90% of the district's budget is wrapped around staff. So the only places to make cuts are mileage on transportation and then staff. And so if I can't afford my staff, guess what happens? Class sizes go up. It has nothing to do with the facility. It is an operational issue. And I want to make that very clear. That is clear evidence. There's nothing to dispute that at all. It's an operational issue. If your superintendent or board decided that your class sizes go up because you can't afford the teachers, that was your district's decision. And I'm sorry you had to go through that,
But
because you're right.
When you're talking about all these schools coming together,
Yeah.
and
Balancing
being in-
enrollment, yeah.
the class sizes will go up.
No, that is no.
So you can promise me that they won't.
I
go
can
up.
tell you they're going to stabilize. Here's what's going to happen in school buildings. Is that I'm going to have an 8th grade class that's going to have 400 kids in it. I'm going to have a 7th grade class that has 275 in it. And so you're going to have to alter your enrollment or your adjustment to staffing to get it to where you need to get to. At high school, it's going to be difficult. And the reason for that is that everybody has to take 9th grade English. Everybody has to take 10th grade English. And so what happens in high schools is you get 35 in a classroom because everybody has to take it and you don't have enough English teachers to make sure there's enough hours in the week. But then you get an AP course in calculus and there's 12 people in the class. So the way schools operate on a day-to-day basis is an operational issue that has to be balanced. The size of school has no correlation to the size of the classroom. There's just not. No, that's not. It is true. You can't show me any instance where it's not true. Again, I can show you the biggest high schools. We work around this country, and in California it's the same way. I know there's big class sizes, but they also have operational cost issues. They can't afford them. They can't
Not
find
my
the teachers.
school. I came from a very nice school.
Well, then they should have
very
had the
well
staff in there to
funded,
do it. They
and
should have had
like
the
I
staff
said,
in there to do it.
So, but they didn't. And that's my case.
That's an
my
operation.
point, though.
That's an operational issue.
But again, so how can you promise me that you guys will not have an
I
operational
can tell you
issue
that
then?
I can't promise you that now because you can't get there.
Then why?
Well, because we're going to, here, understand this one more time. I just want to explain one more time. That because we're balancing enrollment in the schools, that we're trying to get to an enrollment that stabilizes that enrollment in a building, we can actually control the class size then. Because we have enough FTEs walking in the building to support a staff to keep your class sizes the way they need to be. Right now, I can't do that. 520 kids in a middle school cannot support enough FTEs to get your class sizes lower. It's impossible. It is a physical and financial impossibility. If I got 750, I've got an FTEF. You saw the staffing. I can get enough staff in the building to handle the class sizes. That's the funding. And I'm glad to sit down with you to talk about how that works in a funding. But the fact of the matter, it is an operational issue. It is. There's no way around it.
I just feel like it's a money issue.
And I hear the concern.
I feel like this is like
it's a maximizing funding issue. Yeah, you're right, it is. We're spreading our money too thin.
I feel like so what is your job title?
So I am an educational facility planner.
Okay.
I've been doing this for 25 years.
And what company?
It's called HPM.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and it's a construction company.
No. We are there's part of our company that is construction. We have a planning division.
Okay.
I run the planning side.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Okay.
And so I've been planning schools, not constructing schools. I've been planning schools for 25 years.
Okay.
So I'm not a construction guy.
I
have construction people. Here's the advantage, is that I have construction people that work in our company that can advise me on good cost estimating for schedules for buildings. They can show you what it costs to make a building better. We have all that background and resource to help us make good decisions on when we make facilities improvements. So I have a pretty good team behind me, but my job is planning and it has been for 25 years. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jana Ingram. And couple things.
Yes.
I'm not here for a contentious conversation.
No,
Question.
That's all right.
In terms of Tubman, moving CT Walker students to Tubman, what are you going to do with the students who are currently at Tubman? Because my elementary school student doesn't need to be with the students who are at Tubman. So that's a concern. That's a safety concern for me, like someone else relayed.
So our enrollment at Tubman is just individual service needs. They're not a full enrollment there.
Are they going to still be
there?
Yeah,
so we have programs there that are district-wide service programs that do serve students, but not as enrollment, like total enrollments. And so there's not going to be, those services will be relocated to some of those facilities that we have open.
Okay.
And so there won't be really displacement of those any student that goes there.
What about, so wait, you said the services
So
that you
the
provide
services,
will
so
still
they-
continue
so-
to be at
Well,
Tubman? Is
no.
that what you said?
We'll
Okay.
move those services to other facilities that have available space for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a great question, by the way,
Tubman
for
doesn't
clarification.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Tubman doesn't seem to have like a playground
Okay.
for my elementary school student. Is there any plans
Yeah.
to add that to Tubman?
Yeah, so here's kind of the idea behind it. Okay, we obviously have to put some money into the Tubman facility. One of the ideas is that where the baseball field is, that big green space right there, which is actually bigger than CT Walker's play space right now, we would put the playground area in there.
We just raised money for
Yeah,
a
well, I
playground
know.
last
We
year.
could,
at CT
we
Walker.
wouldn't get rid of that stuff. We would make sure the investments move forward. Okay. So also then we have to work on the circulation. There's actually more queuing space at that building than there is at the current CT Walker, and so we would have to do some circulation things and improvements on the site. We do know that there's actually more teaching units in that building. Now it's 3 floors. We heard that as a concern, and we've heard that concern. We know there's more teaching units in that building than there are CT Walker. So there's no reason that we have to shrink the program at all. And so there would be investment into the building before any student would move in if that's the choice that we make, that gets made.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about, so the staffing, or I'm sorry, not staffing, the student model that you presented to us is based on, and not having the large classroom sizes that the lady in front of me just said. But what are we doing to attract the teachers? Because there's a staffing shortage, there's a bus driver shortage right now in Richmond County. So you're doing all this basis, but we won't even have teachers to teach the students in the larger classrooms or the more classrooms in the larger schools. We don't have this. We're not attracting those teachers,
Okay.
or the high-skilled educators as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that
So
comment.
what are we going to do about that?
Okay, so one of the first things is you got to get enough program attraction in the buildings for teachers that know they have the support in the buildings. Right now, the resources are stretched so thin that I'm guaranteeing there's teachers in the room that believe they don't have enough support in the classroom from a coaching standpoint, from a social service standpoint, from a guidance standpoint, from all that. Why would you want to walk into a building like that? And that's what's happening now.
No matter how pretty or new it
No
is.
matter how pretty the building is. Now, I do believe that environment matters. I'm a big believer in that. So I do believe environment matters. So any move that we make, first of all, would make sure that the students are walking into as good or better an environment than they were before. You have to. You can't just not do that, okay?
I get that, but
Yeah.
if there's no teachers,
Well, I agree.
we
And
can't
so
do any of this if we don't. If
You're
we're
exactly
and we
right.
have not been able consistently for years have been able to attract skilled workers.
And-
Thank you to
yeah.
all the teachers and
Yeah.
educators in
Absolutely,
the room.
yeah.
But you guys are stretched thin because we don't have that, and we haven't been able to resolve that problem. So why would you build more schools?
Well, no. We're actually not building.
Or
We're
build or
reinvesting in some buildings.
reinvesting and
Well, we need to do
remodeling.
that. I think that does attract. Here's the other thing, is that, remember, right now the staff is stretched thin across this district. So how do I attract? First of all, I'm going to have more empty space without having the teachers there, which will help, which will add to the problem. And so I do think that's an issue. I think everybody's facing that, regardless of enrollment, regardless of condition. The nation's going to face a teaching shortage more and more in the next 5 to 10 years. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure that our buildings are safe, they're clean, they're secure. We say warm, safe, and dry, obviously. We have to make sure that they have the attractive programs in there where teachers want to come to teach, and then they have the resources and support to be there. And so if I can get a full media specialist, because media specialists don't sit in libraries anymore, they're in the classroom, they're in the curriculum. If I can get a full-time media specialist there, all the better. If I can get a full-time art teacher, a full-time music teacher, full-time PE, that's only better for the core teachers, because it brings a full liberal arts program to the entire building, which is an attractive building to walk into for a teacher.
Okay.
Okay?
Now,
And-
in terms of, I got one more question.
Yeah, you're fine. You're
In
fine.
terms of the reinvestment, because I found it interesting that it is also a construction company, is there any link to you guys suggesting these rebuilding so that your company can
Nope.
get more?
You have a different program management company that manages this, and you have architects that work all over the south of Georgia. Nope, not building your building.
Okay.
Our construction, let me get this very clear. Our construction side doesn't actually touch the K-12 in Georgia, because we do planning and advising in it, and we see that as a direct conflict. Yeah, but and I appreciate you letting me clear that up.
Hey, my name is Mackie Sinkler, and
Hi, Mackie.
I got a couple questions and comments. One of my first questions is, you laid out a plan, and I just talked specifically over the next year to make some changes, and I'm just curious, it's like, what's the return on investment? Like, what specifically is coming along with these changes that's going to benefit the community, the students, teachers, and all that stuff?
Sure. Okay. So it's hard to necessarily put a complete dollar value on everything, right? Because look,
And I don't mean just dollars.
Oh, just
I
dollar
mean,
value. Okay, so
I don't mean dollars.
Yeah,
I mean,
because it's
like,
not
what
really
are
a
we gonna-
financial decision
yeah,
anyway. Right.
What are we going to do
Yeah.
as a result of these changes?
Right.
And when?
Yeah. So first and foremost is that the goal is a programmatic goal. Okay, is to get full funding into these buildings so we have a full complement of programs in a building. I think that's a return on investment. I think that allows teachers to have the support in the schools. I think administrators can budget their buildings better. And I think you have the resources in your buildings. I think that's a return. But I think it has to be foundationally. And I'm going to stress this to my core. I think it has to be, and it has to start, and the magnet schools are so important in districts, but it has to be in our neighborhood schools too. We have to have a focus on getting kids back to our neighborhood schools. And look, right now they're not even staying in their neighborhood schools because they're chasing programs somewhere. We got to get them to stop chasing programs when they know. I had a parent last night. I'll give you a real example. This is a return on investment. That one of the schools she's now at Berry because they have a special education program at Mary Elementary, right? They had to pull out of Warren Road because Warren Road didn't have a special education program for their kid. That mom doesn't have a choice. She had to go to a different school because she can't even get special education services for her kid because there's not enough dollars or programs in the building at Warren Road to get there. You took her choice. No, we took her choice away from her, is what we did. And so if we can get these, because they have the full funding in there, we can get the special ed services in there, the exploratory courses in there, that's surely a return on the investment. That mom, although she's not happy she's leaving Mary right now because she's built some relationships in the special ed program, she's glad to be going back to Warren Road knowing that the special education program will be there because it gets fully funded. That's a return on investment.
Right. I understand that example, but my concern is if you don't have the fidelity with what you're going to get out of all of these moves, as a parent, next year, the year after, I'm living with the changes that's been made, and I don't know what benefit it brought to me, right? So, so these programs, I get it in that example, but I really do think along with the changes, it should be like something tangible that as the parents that are impacted, we can look and see what you've actually done as a result of the changes being made.
That's completely fair. Give me an example of a tangible kind of return, because I think it's a fair statement.
Well, you talked about adding different programs,
yeah.
And specifically in your little graphic, you talked about adding more counselors, adding more teachers. It'd be great to say, okay, when I make this change in the next year, that's going to mean 5 additional teachers at this particular school, or whatever it is. It's going to be this program at this specific school.
Right.
So again, as parents, we can be, you guys can be held accountable if you don't do what you say you're going to do, right? So
Great.
Right now, there's a lot of promises or a lot of suggestions and ideas being thrown around. But my concern is, in 2 years from now, we've made the changes, and I don't see any impact.
Right. And look, I completely agree. We should be held accountable to it.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's happening, and this is where I think that the accountability can be measured and attained, is that because we've laid out a 5-year plan, that we have discussions to have on those other schools that get impacted starting in the 25 year, that if we're not successful in giving a return on your investment, like you just said, then it's going to be more and more difficult to implement the rest of the plan that we have. So the first part of accountability is we better do these right, or we're not going to be successful in the other ones.
Right.
So that's good for us.
I agree.
Yeah.
But the problem is still, if you don't have something specific, then in 2-3 years from now, I don't know what you did. I know you made the changes. Yeah. I don't know what I don't have a measuring stick to go back and say, hey, you know what? Along with these changes, we were supposed to have these programs, and you know what? These programs don't exist. So maybe we should reconsider continuing with these changes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
So, and I think part of it is it's a bit of a, from a facility standpoint, from getting the facilities in the right places at the right time. From a facility standpoint, it's almost a little chicken and the egg. We got to know what our portfolio is before we can kind of see what our changes will be too. And so there's a little bit of balancing act there, okay, that if I know how many buildings that I'm going to get, then I can get the HR and I can get curriculum working on, okay, this is the goal for what's going to happen to Spirit Creek kids or the next school. I'm with you. Trying to find those measures of accountability to make sure we get those delivered to the parents out there as quickly as we can will be important to hold us accountable when we are 1 or 2 years down the road.
Yeah.
So the comment is well taken.
Right, and I understand, you're trying to respond to every random question that comes out here, right? But you guys are collecting questions, you guys are recording this video, so I like to know, what's your intentions with providing maybe better specific answers to some of the questions that's coming out along with all these different hints.
So once we have a decision by the board to know that let's just say if it's this school that closes and we can go to Pine Hill and Hepzibah, then immediately the action that takes place is, okay, here's what happens at these buildings for these students from a curriculum standpoint, a staffing standpoint, a program offering standpoint.
But wouldn't it make sense to answer the questions that's brought out in these hearings?
I would have to do that with every school. Yes. I'd run 100 scenarios that we couldn't get to. So I think that's where the balance is.
Well, I'm just trying to understand, you said, hey, come on out, I'm going to listen, I'm going to answer these questions, but I think you're trying to answer many of them off the cuff, and it's tough to do, and I'm okay with that. But I would think that someone, maybe part of your team, would go back, provide specific answers to some of the questions that were brought up. Like, you guys are probably
Okay.
cataloging how many times you get asked the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I would expect your high volume question is going to get answered, right? You're going to
Sure.
put that out on your webpage or something to that effect before decisions are made.
Okay.
Would make sense to me.
So here's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to look at the staff that's out there right now, because the staff is here.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, hey, what can we get done before this board decision to say what programs are going to be there and what we can be held accountable to? And I think that's what I can do. I can deliver that to that curriculum team to say, we need those answers.
Okay.
And so I know I am trying to answer a lot, and I apologize if it's not thorough enough yet.
All right.
Sometimes I just can't be thorough enough yet, but that's a direction of curriculum that we're going to have to get answered, and I agree, it has to be answered. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yes, my name is Jerry Llewellyn.
Hi, Jared.
Is there enough ghost feeder kids to feed Josie, TW Josie?
So, not necessarily, but
Then why would you take the feeder away from Josie?
because it will be a district-wide choice program now for students to go to Josie. With a comprehensive, it's going to be a comprehensive high school with a career
It's
focus
already a
also.
comprehensive high school.
Well, with a career focus, it's going to be a brand new building that offers a program difference at that school.
Would they be sports, or that's the question I had asked? Was asked.
I still have that question too. Okay,
Okay.
now that's an operational. I'm going to tell you that's an operational issue that we're going to have a discussion on with that Josie community. If it
you
remains,
take the feeder
if it
if
remains
you take the
that.
feeder and the sports and the band or things that
Yeah.
make us vibrant,
Sure.
you take away the school and the spirit of the school.
So, I don't disagree with that comment necessarily. I don't disagree with that comment necessarily, but what I can say is that if there's a decision that it's a comprehensive school that has a sports program, a band program, and whatever the decision from the curriculum side is, from a district-wide choice that hasn't been the offering before, but it's not off the table for Josie. We've had that discussion. It's not off the table for Josie. Now, what are the feeders? I don't know. For the feeders for those programs, maybe there's an opportunity to use those sports or band or something to attract more students to Josie to make stronger programs. I mean, that's an opportunity for me without a feeder. So you have pick of the litter. You can go around the district and you can say, look, you're a great basketball player, and this is also what you can get because it's a choice school. And you can offer an opportunity to a great Josie tradition that right now students are flocking. They're leaving. And it's just what it shows me. I want to get people back to Josie. That is the goal completely, is to get people back to that campus and make it the vibrant campus that it has been traditionally. And so to hold on to it, to do just that. I do think there's some discussion to have around those programs you're talking about. I think to offer that entire program would be a benefit to Josie, to the full extracurriculars and doing that. Maybe it is a little more limited.
As like the man said before, I think you should have those questions answered before you even come.
Well, we're 3.5 years away from a Josie moving.
I understand,
even. And so
certain conversations don't even need to come up.
Then how do I know how to get there?
I don't know.
Yeah,
certain conversations don't need to come up if you don't have the answer. Sometimes people ask the question they don't want to answer to. You ask the questions. You bring up something that you don't even have the answers to.
And I'm telling you, I don't have the answer yet.
Yeah.
I'm being honest with you. We don't have it around the extracurriculars. We have it around the program. The reason kids come to school. Now to support it with the extracurriculars, I think is a great idea. That's an operational decision that the district has to make and the board has to make. Right now, the policy on choice is no. But they haven't closed the door on Josie, and they've said that specifically. Now, I don't know what that answer is yet. But if I can't even start a discussion about what the goal for it is, I don't even know where to start the discussion. But the discussion isn't 600 kids at a high school and let it survive. The direction is, let's reinvest into Josie. Let's at least start at the program level to get more kids there to have the discussion around that.
You're taking the feeder school away from it.
But I'm offering a choice for the entire district to be there.
You have kids that have to drive a bus or parents right past that school to go to another school.
I know, and that happens everywhere. They're doing it now. The kids are leaving now, and the school district is providing that transportation. The kids aren't staying at their schools. So the district is already doing that on a district-wide, and it's causing transportation issues. And it is, I know this is, and I appreciate this conversation. To me, this isn't confrontational. This is a real conversation that has to be had. And it has to be a real conversation about what is really happening and what we can do to try to make sure. I think the alternative was everybody, I swear to a person in that December meeting, the whole 50 people that showed up to that December meeting that we advertised across the district, when we talked about all this stuff, one of the discussions I had with Josie people just like this was, and every single one to a T says, you're closing Josie. And I'm like, I'm not even sure where you're getting that. But the idea is that we're trying to set a mission in place to make sure that we're attracting students to that Josie campus and to make it a robust program, to make it a very attractive, to then compete. It should be a program that competes with magnets. The magnets like that. The magnets love competition for that. It makes their programs better. I think that's what we want to make Josie. Now, this question, you're right, I don't have the answer to a football team, a band. That is going to.
You should have those questions
Well,
answered
I wish I
before you
did
bring
have them,
that
and I
up.
don't yet. So
But that's all I have.
thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thanks for the conversation.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Anita Baynard. I have a student that attends RCTCM,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a few concerns and questions as well.
Okay.
The biggest thing is, if they transfer to Josie, are these teachers transferring with them, or would they have different teachers? Because I know he's been there since 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of his teachers, he's in 9th grade now, a lot of his teachers came up with him.
Sure.
So I was just going to see what was going to be the change with that, because they got a rapport, a
Yeah.
relationship, they know these students. What are they going to do about that?
So the idea is that, especially in specialized programs, you can't just displace those because those are teachers that are specialized in those teaching areas. So those are, for me, it's an easier answer to say yes, that staff moves with the program. You don't separate that staff because they do have more specialized skills to teach the classes you're talking about. And so that, again, the district's intent would be to move the staff in whole as best they can. So yes.
Would that be guaranteed?
Well,
Because I know I heard you before, you said they might end up just, once these schools merge together, they're probably going to be dispersed, basically, what you had said.
No, not for the magnet and choice.
But if they're going to Josie,
Again, down the road, yeah. So what will happen is that the RCTC program that exists, it's going to move to Josie. We'll keep that staff and move into that new state-of-the-art facility with the students. That would be the goal for that. Now, from an HR perspective, that's a teacher decision if they want to move. But my understanding from HR is that you've got the first position there along with your program, especially those choice programs. Again, you just can't find specialized teachers in that all the time, so you want to make sure you're guaranteeing that.
right. So if
Okay.
they go to Josie, are these classrooms going to be set up for the programs that RCTCM
That's the goal.
has? Because
State of the art.
Right now, they got the cyber.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have a partnership with Eisenhower.
Absolutely.
So, like somebody said about A.R. Johnson, they partner with AU. How
Yeah.
are we going to transition these kids when, RCTCM is not that far from, Fort Eisenhower?
Yeah, again, it's the same answer for the A.R. Johnson, is that bringing resources into the building, cybersecurity is actually a very virtual program too, so they can work both ways. And so what you do is you figure out that partnership with your partner, allowing them to come into the facility to teach also. But if there's opportunity to go to the base, then you provide a solution to get to the base. And so that's what career programs do all over the country
Yeah, but
when
a
they've
lot
got
of
those
them are actually
partnerships.
going to these places. They're
Yeah,
not coming
absolutely.
inside the
And they'll
facility.
continue to do that. Yeah, that won't change at all. And I do think, because it happens in career programs also, regardless of just the cyber stuff. Like in a career program and pathway, they get apprenticeships, they get those kind of things where they go out to the businesses too. And so we've got to figure out how we get those kids attached to those. So I think it works a lot the same way. This just happens to be in a high-tech field. But the spaces, state-of-the-art. It's a brand new building, built to those specifics. So yeah, we're intending to do that, and that's the investment we guarantee to make in that. Yeah.
So you said 2024 to 25?
25 would be, so the first year would be the move. Okay, so that 25 year, because what we need to do then is make the moves to get the Josie existing high school building empty so we can start to raise that building and selectively raise that building to build the brand new space for the career opportunities, including RCT, the brand new space for that. Along with using the existing Merriam Barnes facilities that are there, and the Murphy classrooms end up being the core classroom part of it. That it's a middle grades building that can handle that high school curriculum in it too. Now, you put it together and you get that comprehensive view. Brand new spaces for teachers to come over from the RCTC program and continue on that program and include the partnerships.
Okay,
So I can understand there's anxiety around
Yeah,
that.
because I'm just letting you know,
Yeah.
like, you know,
No, they need
when
that
this first
continuity.
came up,
Yeah,
you know, my child,
Yeah.
teachers are talking.
Yeah.
Some teachers don't want to leave because they don't want to do the commute. They don't want to go all the way down to Josie. Sometimes it's convenient for them to be over there. Yes, some people, I mean, like, he's a car rider.
Yeah.
But going
Yeah.
to Josie would be a big commute for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like on the opposite side of town.
Yeah.
And I choose that because I don't let him ride the bus because I don't want him coming home at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Or 6 o'clock doing
Yeah,
work.
understood.
So it's a lot of things y'all got to take in consideration. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's convenient. People are at certain schools for convenience.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then if we got to take a test, you're saying you're letting neighborhood kids still stay at that school. What's the point of testing? It's not a magnet school if you just letting, it's just anybody could come in.
So
What's the
again,
point?
I understand that kind of test that you're talking, that what you're talking about for a school score. I mean, your individual student has their own goals and aspirations that don't get impacted by their school test score. So
I know, but I
yeah,
know the
and I
different,
understand
the
that too.
pathway and everything is a lot different because they
Yeah,
they do
yeah,
heavy
yeah.
work.
Well,
you know? Like
again,
the other schools
yeah.
as well too, but it's a little heavier. That's why they don't have as much sports or certain things because
Sure.
it's academic driven.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I was just going to see how that was going to work.
Well, I do think that in the choice program, now, again, you can build school within school concepts to separate that if you wanted to. You can separate that choice program. There's 1,000 choice schools in comprehensive schools that work as schools within schools in this country. So if that's a pathway to keep the test scores separate, if that's a concern, the board needs to look at that. And so I think there's those concerns, as we continue to have the conversations over the next couple of years, should continue to be raised. How are we going to do test scores? That's a great question for the board.
So,
And
at the end of the day, it's up to the board.
it's a policy issue. It's a board policy issue. It's that the board policy drives that. And so, again, much like we say right now the magnets and choice don't have sports as a policy. That can change because the board can adapt the policy if they feel there's a need for the benefit of the students to do that. And so that happens all the time with school boards. They see the modifications of policy to make sure that we're accommodating where we're trying to go. The idea is that Josie doesn't stay in the bottom. We want to raise them all up. And so hopefully that's not a concern.
And we was concerned about safety as
Yeah,
well too. Like
absolutely.
I say, when she said what happened
Okay.
earlier this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, going to RCTCM, I can't see no way they're going inside the school.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I think all schools should be safe, no matter if it's magnet or public school.
We agree.
But with that being a big issue down there,
Sure.
I mean,
Okay.
so we got to take in consideration about safety as well too.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. Thanks.
So we're moving into the 8 o'clock hour. At this point, if anybody has a card and they'd like to make a comment, please make your way up here and get into the line. Yeah, just say your name.
Okay, my name is Ashley Phillips. I'm a
Hi,
teacher
Ashley.
at Gracewood Elementary. I have just a few questions for you. So the first one would be, what month will y'all decide on next year's school closing so that the teachers are not trying to leave in the middle of the school year and we're not having all these teachers scattering about? Do you know when that may be?
So right now, the practice by the district has been to do it this time of year. The intent is that if there's a decision that we can move forward on, is to try to inform before a March or April deadline. It's a scramble. I know it is the impact on the school level, but it's an impact on HR, it's an impact on transportation, there's a domino impact that the district doesn't want to have to deal with in April. And so one of the reasons, again, to lay out the 5-year plan is to, if we're going to decide to move this direction, is that how do we put the things in place with a community conversation with you guys over the summer and over the next fall to make a decision earlier than later. So I can't give you an exact month, but what I'm going to tell you, we can't do it in the middle of March because it is too late. But right now we're kind of in that practice. We got to get out of that practice.
'Cause you're going to have teachers wanting to leave now so that they're not stuck next year, and then that's
Sure.
going to leave us in a bind this coming school year to not have enough teachers.
So, and there's where I think, again, having the 5-year plan allows HR to come in and talk to you guys as individuals and as a whole cohort to figure out then what your plans could be. And because I would see that as a concern also, and HR would definitely see that as a concern.
Right.
And so if we have to come to you in March, it's too late. At least we've had something on paper, a goal out there. We can have the conversation earlier. Okay.
My next one is, so last year, Gracewood was overcrowded at 107%. So you took almost 100 students away from us, but now we're all of a sudden underfunded, and now you want to close Gracewood.
So a couple things in there, okay? Again, it wasn't specifically Gracewood that we just said it's Gracewood. Okay, we looked at the entire kind of portfolio around the building of Diamond Lakes, down to McBean, around, to make sure that if it was potential to get students that live closer to buildings and the transportation, and we could get other schools to fully funded, what would it be? And so, again, I can't answer to what happened last year. I wasn't here. I wasn't part of that plan, and I didn't make that decision.
I think that should have went into
It did. It absolutely did. And again, one of the concerns about look, we had that conversation even about Spirit Creek, because just right across the street was the last year conversation. And so had this been a 5-year plan to kind of look out forward, it could have been planned better. It might have been, and again, if it wasn't Gracewood, McBean, you take McBean out of the equation, then you have the furthest school out in the district that has schools way in the south that we can't get rid of. And so sometimes there's buildings that unfortunately have to be the exception and not the rule. And like a McBean, for instance, it's a rural county school. And if we took that one away, we would have kids on a bus for an hour. And so strategically, sometimes you have to have schools that are smaller and you just kind of swallow that pill. And so it's not necessary, and again, I will tell you, I know that Gracewood came to the rise of it, and I know that's probably a consequence of past decisions made. But in the long run, when we come out and we have this conversation about what this portfolio looks like in that area, then we should probably reach some conclusion as a solution together. If there's ideas on how to keep keep all those elementaries open and get them fully funded and get students back, we're open. If not, we're going to have to, because my comment's going to be this, and I say this with as much empathy as I can. If it's not your school, then I have to go to the next school, and guess what they're going to tell me? Why us?
Right.
And so it's going to be a continuous conversation that we have. So I appreciate the comment, though, on the consequence of past decisions.
So technically, we are at 454 kids.
Yeah.
So, but you have the schools that are around us that are a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles down the road that are not, that are now going to be our feeder schools. So why take us and not close one of them that are actually underfunded?
Yeah, so part of it, again, is looking at demographics, see where students live and where they're located in proximity to schools sometimes. And sometimes when the center school allows us to be closer in that proximity to those buildings, there are some that will have some longer ride times. There's some that are going to have far shorter ride times. And so when you kind of look at that center school kind of comes into play a lot. And so I think it wasn't necessarily just at 450 didn't mean you were staying necessarily, even though it could be, it gets to your minimum funding. But what it does is it allows more schools to get to minimum funding.
Right, but then taking away those 100 students, you know. But my other thing is when you now take those students from Gracewood and you put them into Goshen and Diamond Lakes, you're putting Goshen at 117%, and then you're putting Diamond Lakes at 130% capacity.
So that's a live-in number. We know that how many students we have leave those areas to go to magnets and to other boundary schools, and we have declining enrollment.
Well,
so we don't think
like
that's
you're going to be not having that.
But we don't think we know we're not going to. And if the trend changes, and I hope it does. Don't get me wrong. I'm hoping your trend changes. If the enrollment comes back, the school can't close. But we got to figure out where you're going to get the kids from. We don't think those buildings are going to open up.
If we were in jeopardy of closing, why would you take our students?
It's to make other schools. So
that
one
we didn't
school
even
gets
know
others.
that we were even in jeopardy
Yeah.
of closing because
Yeah.
we never even knew that this survey was taking place. We just were told, hey, guess what? You're not going to be here in 2 years.
So, again, as far as the communications go, we've communicated out to the school lines as best we can. We do. I had a principals meeting. We've been teacher advisory today. We're trying to meet every group we can. I can't, short of knocking on everybody's door, we're trying to communicate this as best we can. I think George did a good job of explaining all the pathways we tried. That you didn't, I can only apologize.
We definitely found out after the fact, for sure.
Yeah.
But leading up to it, no one was in
so
the loop except
what
for
I do know is that on the school line and it went out to notification, our December meeting, which was a critical meeting in this, that nobody saw as critical. 50 people showed up to make these decisions. 50 people showed up. And it was sent out to the schools. It was sent out to the network. It was published in the papers. It was published on the website. We did a lot of things. And all of a sudden, and this is what I get a lot, when the school gets mentioned is when people do. When we had a real big conversation about how we make good decisions in this. And so what I'm telling you is I apologize that you didn't. And I'm sorry that you heard after the fact. We're doing our best to communicate all we can. And we will continue to try to improve that. And so when we hear comments like that, we will work on improvement for that. And I'm apologizing that happened to you.
I think another question that I have is the comments and the concerns and the whatever anybody has to say, the parents, the staff, the teachers, how much of it is actually being listened to and taken into consideration? Because to me it sounds like this is a done deal. We just got to deal with it. We can sit up here and say what we want to say, but I don't feel like it's going to matter.
Okay, so first and foremost, I did say that our conversations last night has sparked a district leadership meeting tomorrow. So it is making a difference. The second thing is that what it used to be like is you used to stand that microphone and nobody would ever respond to you. You didn't know where it was going. To the end of the microphone? We had people yelling in meetings. That didn't go anywhere. It just made people anxious and not want to come back out. The goal is to have a conversation like we're having. We're being recorded. Run a court reporter to make sure that the board gets a full transcript and they can read all they want. Board members are showing up to these to listen to what we have to say and I'm trying to provide a response so you know that you've been heard. So yeah, the actions are happening. I had parents from CT Walker come to me in the parking lot tonight to talk about how can you get out here before even the board meeting just to calm our community down. Yeah, we're here, we're listening, we're talking to you. That's not happened before, and now we're here. And that's what we can offer you.
So when you did all of this, like how much, is it just a numbers thing and a money thing? Because I don't feel like anybody talked to the community, the teachers, the students. I mean, because you can't just take some kids and put them in another school. You can't take some of these kids and put them in Josie. And these kids, some of them can't intermingle this way.
Much like I said last night, like I can't take those kids out of Warren Road because there's no special ed program. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, I agree with you. You do have to but if I'm going to, right now we're placing kids in buildings that don't have the programs they need and the services they need because they don't have a choice. And so you have to be intentional about when the move happens to make sure the services are there for the right children. So for instance, if it's things like important like before and after school daycare, like if they need that service has to be there. If a special education need is going to be there, and look, the fact of the matter is that that's going to be stretched then too. Is that every school should have special education services. It's not happening. And so when that move gets made, we have to pay attention to those student needs to see where they are going. And look, there's going to be examples where students can't find a program at the building they specially need because there's so few students and so resources to get there. Every district still has that. So we'll work our best to make sure the program offerings are there for the students that need them. And that's a valid concern. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Will you have meeting minutes tomorrow for your district meeting to know that what we say is actually being addressed?
So what we're going to talk about tomorrow addresses what has been talked about here. Okay. Now, again, it is what it is. I mean, that's fine. I mean, you can. I mean, everything that we've talked about is on the screen for you. There's nothing there's no value in hiding anything because all that does is raise your angst more. And so everything that we see, you see too. If you go and you look at the reports on the website, which apparently nobody knew was there, you can see there is neighborhood by neighborhood housing yield data. You can see that there's educational adequacy of every facility and capacity. You can see that there's enrollment data. You can see that all this stuff that we're tracking is stuff that we talk about in this meeting. We're going to talk about the same thing tomorrow. We're going to look at these programs that have raised concerns. Our immediate addressing is making sure that we look at these buildings that are going to be up for action this year because we have to really, the comments that we had about making sure we can deliver what kind of programs they're going to have, accountability. We've got that work to do too. We've got a little time to work. We've got a year out that we want to have this conversation.
For a reason, you know.
Absolutely.
So we want to make sure that us as teachers and parents are actually being heard.
Yep. And when we come and talk to you, you're going to see those results. Like we need to come and talk to you guys, and that's the intent, to talk to you as a community. And so we will do that. And I think you'll see the result of our conversations there. So we can answer the questions even that you have that we can get a little more deep into, but because we need to do that. Okay.
All right. I appreciate
that. Thanks.
Hello. I'm Stacy Fryer.
Hey, Stacey.
I was at the meeting yesterday. I want to offer a apology as the fact that I am one of the parents that left the meeting thinking that our magnet schools were closing. Not necessarily closing, but you're merging them with a choice school, which choice is not the same as magnet. Our students have to test to get into the magnet schools, which brings a different caliber of students than a choice school brings. So I left and informed our PTO at CT Walker because Walker students go to our high school magnet schools. So I wanted them to be informed so that they would come to these meetings.
That's fair.
But I'm understanding tonight, sorry, my voice is a little craggy.
You're fine.
I'm understanding that tonight, those schools are not closing. They're still going to be magnet schools, right? Okay, so A.R. Johnson, after the 2 years is up and RCTCM moves, A.R. Johnson is continuing to be at the property that is next to the technical school.
So right now, that is the proposal on the table.
Okay.
That's a proposal on the table.
And
okay?
just so you understand, the wording that you used and what was used yesterday, it seemed as though A.R. Johnson, RCTCM, though it was going to be a school within a school for those 2 years, it seemed that when they moved to Josie, both schools were moving.
Fair enough. And,
So then when you said that at the end of the meeting that they were going to be a choice school, that's where I took it as that both schools were no longer going to be a magnet school.
Okay, that's fair. Now, so you already see the impact you made. That we're very clear tonight, and we're going to get clearer as we go along. I think an ongoing conversation. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And like I told you last night, I will try to get clearer on this. And I know it got murky. Even in that roundabout discussion I had with another parent, I felt like that took us down a rabbit hole that confused it more.
Yeah.
And I need to pull back out of that a minute as a facilitator and a moderator to do that better. We've already made improvement because of what you've brought to us, and we appreciate that.
So with that, I understand that you're needing the A.R. Johnson building to house the middle school for the convenience of being closer. I understand all of that. But it does seem like we're getting displaced and not as an afterthought. And you're taking our top schools and making them feel like an afterthought.
Okay.
Also,
okay, that's fair.
And
okay.
also, RTC, the technical magnet school, was built for its programs.
Sure.
So why are we moving A.R. Johnson into a school that's not built for us, and it's built for programs that is for culinary and mechanics, not for health sciences?
So,
and then we're building a whole new building for a building that just got built a few years ago for those students.
So, understanding from a singular standpoint, standing in an A.R. Johnson seat or standing in an RCTCM seat, that makes sense. From a district-wide perspective of trying to invest in neighborhoods and magnets, it's a broader discussion. And so, the opportunity to enhance and promote a strong, healthy, programmatic feeder pattern for Laney has to be a goal of ours. We have to get that as a measured goal. Now, first of all, you're not an afterthought. You're the first line on there. That's how the discussion starts. And so I don't want you to think of that as an afterthought. The thought is that if we do, you're right, the building was built for that. It's not attracting as many students as it was intended to do. And so there has to be something done about that. Now, the other thing is that there are spaces in that building that are conducive to A.R. Johnson, and we can make some remediation of the buildings in pretty good space to help that work too. And so we're willing to make that investment for A.R. Johnson. And on top of that, when the program does move, you have room for growth. To me, that's, even though I see the displacement from the medical community, I see that, and I know that's something we have to talk through, we saw it as an opportunity to grow the A.R. Johnson program. That's what the goal was. And so maybe we stumbled out of the gate in our delivery message, and I apologize for that, but the goal was to really do that, to make sure that our magnets get stronger. But in the same breath, to make my neighborhood feeder even stronger. The connectivity of programmatic connectivity from a middle school to a high school can do wonders. So again, from a district perspective, we have to pay attention to both in that. And completely understanding where you're coming from on why From that perspective, I get it. The investment will be made to make sure you have the spaces, and again, stay there. It's a great building. Now, again, we're not there yet. Obviously, we have more conversations to have with you all, over the next year, and as we continue to move forward in this, and including logistics of next year and all that, and how that's got to work. And so, I think there's a great conversation that we're starting to have here. And are we to the final answer yet? I don't know, but we got a roadmap, and I like that. We haven't had a roadmap before. And so, and again, the last thing I ever want this to be, because I don't think this is healthy, this isn't a neighborhood school versus magnet school discussion. This is a district-wide success story that we need to build. We can't have 2 or 3 schools be our only successes. And so the idea is that how do we get your program stronger and bigger in the same time trying to make those neighborhoods stronger and bigger? So that, understand our intention there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do.
Okay. Yeah. And I know you do. I know you do. So I appreciate that.
The other question I have is mainly about transportation.
Sure.
So having a student that's at C.T. Walker, which will now be at Tutman, and a student that's at A.R. Johnson, which is now going to be at the technical school. One of the reasons why I feel like the technical school does not have the student population that they have is because a lot of our students come from our C.T. Walker school. And it's already not an easy commute when you have to get a student to both schools.
Yeah, yeah.
And the busing system that they have in place, I'm not putting my elementary school child on a high school bus.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Or I don't want to even put my 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader on a high school bus.
Sure.
So I want to drive my child. I want to drive my children to their school. I don't understand how I'm going to make it to Tutman and to the school at the same time.
But I don't know your individual plight either. I just don't. And so what I do know is that it's a district-wide program. And so we have to provide now, and again, I go back to the idea is that you have an opportunity to be able to drive your kids. And I know it's probably a hardship most days trying to get to work and trying to balance all that. I get that. We have plenty of students that don't have access by a vehicle that we need to make sure that they can get to their buildings. And so there are other students that don't find themselves in that find that by going to those locations that they're currently at, run into railroad tracks that make buses late. That hurts program, it hurts morale, it hurts a student's confidence. And so trying to, again, at the RCTC campus and even the Tubman campus, trying to balance that transportation a little better is one of the goals. The transportation department was sitting with us in every meeting we had. And every time we threw some spaghetti on the wall, we looked at transportation and said, can that work? Or is it better for transportation? The hardest position to hire right now in this district is a bus driver. And so we need to minimize how much busing we need. And so that was paid attention to in this. And I know that you've got individual things like that, but I think the district has a global issue of getting district-wide kids to these programs too. So we're trying, again, it's a balance for us. Yeah.
And has it been thought about at all? And I understand that you're broadening Josie to make it a choice school for everyone, but has it been thought about putting A.R. Johnson there so that way it stays at the medical district and so that the technical magnet school can stay with the technical school? Like, has it been thought about doing it that way? It
has, and so this bounced back and forth a lot. Okay, when we call what we call options development, this bounced back and forth a lot. And again, it came down. And again, I think this is the one that we haven't, that I still think we need a lot of discussion on, is even in the RCTC program, the comment about the middle grades. We were thinking the same thing about middle grades and how that works being back on the Josie campus. And so I think that, yeah, that idea has been brought up because I think that could work too. And again, I think any exposure to even because the great thing about like magnet programs within a comprehensive school, so that school within a school model, is those students that aren't in the magnet program have access and vision to that, and they can see what's going on, and it can inspire students to want to go that direction too. I think it's a beautiful model. It's that 6 through 8 component, and I have the same issue with RCTC on the 6 through 8 component, going to a high school campus. and having enough curriculum there to support the program, and again, separation and all that stuff. I don't think it's off the table for discussion, is what I'm telling you. And I think we continue to have that discussion.
And I guess my other question with that is, like, could the Josie property be still a magnet school without the choice schools? Because technically what we're saying is we're not right sizing, but we are making all of our high schools so that we're funded. So they all should be choice schools technically, right?
They
That's
kind
the
of
term
are.
you used yesterday.
Yeah, they kind of are.
So why are we making a choice school then? If you're trying to make all of the high schools a choice school, why are we making a choice school and putting our magnet school students into the choice school?
Okay, so ultimately the plan would be that the magnet isn't with the choice, okay, because the RCTC is a choice right now, not a magnet. Okay, there's a test to get in, but it's a choice to take and all that. It's different from a magnet. That designation, I don't know if it changes or not, but at a comprehensive career school, I think it's an interest-based program. I think that you can't just be a slacker in a program. I think there needs to be standards for it, certainly. But I think there has to be some interest-based programs for choice also. So the idea of when you look at the whole portfolio then, remember then we've taken basically two operational management, RCTC and Josie, and made them one building. So basically we're down a high school there from an operational standpoint and a staffing standpoint. And again, the Glen Hills, that gets us to 2 high schools. And so we would go down to 6 high schools, but we would still have the 7 buildings because we have the choice program. Just like we would never get rid of, and I should say we have 10 because we have A.R. Johnson, we have Davison. And so like we would never get rid of those, we want to keep a Josie building to be that choice program now and keep a neighborhood spirit alive that has a view into a career pathway. And so it's hard to explain from an operational standpoint, but basically operationally we are down 2 high schools in. And that's a big goal because that means our enrollment can increase at our neighborhood schools to get them above that minimum funding and get them close to that 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 to get that improves athletics, improves bands, improves all that stuff. I know that's a lot in that, and I apologize for that, because it's a lot of thinking, a lot of process to get there, but that's the goal. And again, I think it's worth a discussion to figure out, are those logistics right? Because I do think that one of the concerns that we do have is separating from the medical community there. And that's a valid point for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to raise that up, because I know you don't want to bend over and talk the whole time. There you go.
Okay. My name's Peggy Dixon.
Hi, Peggy.
And I come here as a social worker
Yeah.
and a Richmond County taxpayer. I've worked with families and children for over 40 years, predominantly family and children in crisis. And I've heard a lot here tonight about buildings, programs, and what do you call the children, the TFEs?
No, a full-time equivalency enrollment.
Okay, okay. Well, I haven't heard a lot about the children and the impact that it's going to have on them. Looking over the past 5 or 6 years, these children have really gone through a lot emotionally, socially. With the COVID shutdown, we know that suicide rates now in 13 and 14-year-olds have doubled since before the COVID, and they've not come down. Anxiety, depression, other rates. Children have to have stability. And I don't know how familiar you are with the demographics, with the socioeconomics of Richmond County. It's different than Burke, and it's very different from Columbia County. But, we have homeless children. And the only stability that those homeless children have is the same teacher, knowing some of the other teachers in the school. And they're bonded with many of these teachers. If you would just go in the schools and see the hugs that these teachers get, the appreciation that they get from the children. You have children that, unfortunately, due to the COVID lockdowns, got locked in the homes with their abusers. So these children have gone through a lot of trauma, and they don't just get over it. Most psychiatrists and psychologists will tell you that that has long-term effects on children and also has effects on their success. Particularly for the small children who sort of look at their teachers as sort of not a substitute mother, but someone who really loves them. And they're going to be jerked out and put in unfamiliar surroundings with someone they don't even know. This causes anxiety for children. And when children are anxious, they put out adrenaline and they put out cortisol, and that will attack the brain. And it makes it harder for them to learn. So I'm hoping at some point I hear more about the children, because I'm not hearing a lot about the children. I'm hearing about federal funds. I'm hearing about state funds. I also wanted to address that also. As a social worker, I know with state, federal, and even local fund, it comes with strings attached. And what we have seen, what I have experienced over the past couple of years, is the push for unisex bathrooms for children, for boys to be involved in women's sports. I'm 66 years old, so I remember well before Title IX was passed, you didn't have all these sports programs for women. But now we're hearing that because of schools that are getting all these extra federal funds, they're having to allow boys who get up one day and decide that they want to be in the girls' locker room and they want to play the girls' sports. You've got girls that are being injured, girls that are having their scholarships taken away from them because they do not have the physical ability to beat some of these guys in track and field, in basketball, volleyball, soccer. So I would like to know what strings are attached once Richmond County gets some of these federal funds, okay? And that's all I have to say.
And I appreciate that from the perspective of a social worker who sees this every day, and the impacts that have happened over the last few years. What I do want to say about federal funds into the school operational, very few dollars, with the exception of Title I dollars, go into schools from the federal government. The federal government actually funds less than 2% of school funding across the country. And most of that is tied to Title I. The other is, if you're fortunate enough to get hit by a tornado, the government will come in and build you a new school. Yeah, I know, that's a terrible way to get a new school from the federal government.
Even $1 comes attached with
it all comes attached. It comes from the state. It absolutely does.
And I think it's important that particularly parents who have maybe daughters that are really good in athletics to get an understanding. Will they have to compete against males?
So, yeah.
If all the federal funds that you're talking about are coming in, I think that's very important because a lot of, women can get college scholarships now to play at Georgia, Georgia Tech, wherever.
Sure.
And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Hi.
Hey.
I was at the meeting last night.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome back.
Hi, I'm Joe Kimball.
Hi, Joe.
I have some questions to read off that for persons that are not here tonight, and I told them I was coming.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
One lady, someone asked me to read this. Tubman does not have secure fencing for the C.T. Walker Magnet School. Students, any way you can walk on the campus. How much money will it take to redo Tubman versus C.T. Walker?
Okay, so there's a couple things there that to master plan the site, to do an exact dollar amount. So we actually met today with the facilities guys. We met with Benton and Jeffrey to talk about the improvements that would have to happen to that site to occur, okay? And we know that a playground, so I know there's a new that they've invested in a playground, but what would it take to get a playground either moved or even new equipment there? So that's going to cost, and then the circulation, and then the sidewalk ability, and then the interior spaces. And so, again, right now it's a placeholder. It's somewhere between $3 and $5 million to invest in that building to get it to get all that done the right way. And that's a good investment into a building, certainly. Now, you could do the same thing for the C.T. Walker that's not going to go as far in that building. So, again, it's a matter of how you want to invest in your facilities. Does the $3 million go further at C.T. Walker, or does it go further at Tubman? Is the program better at Tubman? And if you can make those improvements better at Tubman, would you? And so I think that, would a fence be around it? Absolutely. The first thing is safety and security. the first thing is making sure students have access in the buildings the right way. And so even to assume that would say that the district's not doing the facilities the right way, and you know they are. The facilities are doing a good job with the money they have and investing into security vestibules and better lockdown systems. The new schools that you see coming in and the remodels that you've seen have these. So those are going to be there if that's a decision that gets made. So there will be an investment in that building for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so make sure I got this clear, because they may ask me, what is the clarity? Okay, so
Yeah.
renovating Tubman further will cost the district less money.
Here's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Here's what I'm telling you, is that if we invested the same dollar amount, because CT Walker is going to need investment in the building too. So what do I have to spend there? $3, $5, $10, $20 million to make sure that that building can last too?
Why
So
not?
yeah.
I mean,
so why
not?
So why can't I make it the other building and promote a strong middle school program on a site? If I can get two out of that. So again, in the singular perspective, from the CT Walker perspective, I can see that. That makes sense to me. In the broader perspective of having a comprehensive middle school site that is enhancing that Laney feeder and promoting that neighborhood and having a full middle school site with athletic and training and practice fields, that's the bigger vision. So we can't have one discussion without the other.
Next question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why not have Murphy Middle combined with Hornsby Middle at Hornsby Middle School current based site, since it is not fully at capacity?
So a part of that is that the enrollment number and the addition onto Hornsby would be cost prohibitive. The square footage at Hornsby to add enough classroom space and core space at that building would cost far more than already having a building there that we don't have to invest into, other than some updates and modernization. So again, you don't want to make it financial until it's financial. And so we have a building that's viable, that we can do something with programs, or we can double the size of a building that we don't need to double. And so I think that's kind of where you start to make decisions on that.
Well, this is not a question on this card, but
Yeah.
since we're asking it,
Yeah.
what is going to happen to the Hornsby Middle School site?
So the one thing that we planned in early on in this program that we talked about was what to do with buildings that aren't of educational use anymore. And so I think there's several actions that you can do. I think the first action should look at demolition. I think that buildings that sit empty that you're not going to use, that you don't have a plan for, I think could be good green space. Or they could be, if available for somebody else to use to put on the tax rolls, put it on there. The other thing is the district does still look for alternative education space. They still look for professional training space. And so part of the solution has to be, when we make the recommendation, what happens to that building. And so those are options for Hornsby. We can demolish it and leave the site clean. We can use it for a training center. We could use it for alternative education. So I think there's different pathways for that building to be used for.
One thing, there's an elementary school next door to it.
And?
Hornsby Elementary and Hornsby Middle.
Yeah, Morgan Road is right next to Jamestown.
No, what I'm
and it
saying,
has an
what
alternative
you're
program.
saying, excuse me.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that they can put maybe alternative school there, or another, you know what I'm saying? So this is going to be, as one lady said, a safety issue.
Okay.
Or, yeah, I'm just bringing it to the table.
Understood.
To say, since you're making it, when you brought it up, I know my mind was thinking that.
So
So
right.
I wasn't aware if you knew there was an elementary school that's joined with that building.
I do. I also know that I also know that the alternative school is at Morgan Road, right next to Jamestown Elementary, and there's no issues there with that.
Okay. All right. Next question. Are you moving the schools to expand the medical district? Are you trying to also expand the cancer center? Are you also trying to expand AU and Laney Walker neighborhood? You have already gotten rid of the families. Now it's on to the children. Also, why are you breaking up A.R. Johnson, and where will be the science and health science portion of that be sent?
Okay. If I may, A.R. Johnson asked and answered. I think we've been through that one a lot. I don't know what it means to expand the cancer center to do that. I'm not sure where that question, or why. You'll just have to clarify.
Give me a
that for
second.
Yeah.
The questions I'm reading are people that gave me these questions to ask. So,
Yeah. And no, that's fine. And so
Okay,
that's what I'm
thank
saying.
you.
I asked and answered the air. I don't think I'm
Okay,
going to have to
all
keep
right.
these
I just
people here
want
for
people
that.
to know that, so
Yeah.
I was clear about that.
Yeah, and I'll
Okay,
be
go
clear.
ahead.
I don't think they need to spend another 5 minutes listening to A.R. Johnson when we've answered it 5 times tonight. So
Well,
that's where I'm at.
Every question should be asked.
And they were.
Okay,
They
thank
were.
you.
Thank you.
Are you saying that guaranteed transportation will be available for the entire A.R. Johnson Magnet students to get to Augusta, to AU, the VA, and the community sites that gives on-hand experience from TCM location?
I'm saying the district will keep partnering with those to get the students to those programs they need to.
Okay, because I know that every college application, they ask for community experience, hand-on, that helps those students to get into their programs.
Yes, I agree with that.
And they ask for that community experience as part of, and even scholarships offered.
Sure.
Ask the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, the questions I'm going to ask are my questions.
Yes.
Okay? Okay, with all the plan changes, how will it affect the growth or decline of the enrollment of Lucy Laney, Westside, Cross Creek, and Butler compared to ARC and Hepzibah?
I'm just going to have you ask that one more time so I got the
Okay.
order right on it.
With all the plan changes proposed, okay, how will this affect the growth or decline of enrollment at Lucy Laney, Westside, Cross Creek, and Butler compared to ARC, which is Augusta Richmond Academy, and Hepzibah High School?
Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts in there. Okay, so for instance, when you're looking at kind of that Bel Air move, and you've got kind of that Copeland boundary and all that moving on, obviously that impacts students that currently either go to ARC or go to Butler or go to Glen Hills. That's going to impact that. So now they're going to have a direct feeder. Okay, so it's in the Bel Air and then the West Side. So that will impact enrollment that heads to one high school, or to 2 high schools actually. As you start to make the moves into the new Richmond Hills, we have 2 planning units that currently that go into the Glen Hills feeder pattern. They are much closer into that Richmond Hills elementary, middle, and then Butler High. So that's going to impact that as that rolls. So Butler will get those planning units. Hepzibah gets impacted by the idea that and if this move were to go forward, that you got a feeder for elementaries for Hepzibah elementary, middle, and then high school that come out of this area also. So you're going to see impact of that to get it closer to full funding. And then for Cross Creek, I'm trying to get all the moving parts for you. Cross Creek actually stays pretty stable in the feeder pattern in this one right now. And then, Laney. Laney's your last one. So Laney now then has the feeder patterns, the geographic feeder patterns from Josie that will impact how many kids actually geographically feed into that middle school and then the high school. And so then the wild card here is that with a enhanced career and education program and a choice program at Josie, what does that do to the enrollments and the crossovers then? Now, will it reduce the amount of students who transfer across boundaries? Likely. And the reason for that is that we don't have the capacity to move kids like we do today. That's an opportunity to keep kids in their boundaries, to keep them in their cohorts so they have they're more tied to their school buildings and their neighborhoods. So I do think there's impacts that shift around because of this and because of those feeder patterns that happen at the elementary grade level and some of those planned unit developments that were far in play before we came in the door when Richmond Hill and Bel Air got built. And so I think that you're going to see those impacts, and then obviously someday again, whatever the decision on Glen Hills is, and we've got 4 years to talk about a Glen Hills decision, that's going to have an impact on students going to ARC and to Butler and Hepzibah. And so that can have an impact on that. But that comes out of that Jamestown Road, that comes out of that Meadowbrook Elementary School discussion on shifting that down. So it kind of does, it does a little bit of rotation like this, if you will, a little rotation like this, and a little rotation like this for your high school enrollments. That's a lot. But it starts at the elementary grade level.
Okay. Here's a statement, but I'm going to make it. Aren't all students are being bused to various schools? Why must busing be an issue for students and parents who want to be in attendance in the magnet schools where they are currently located? Because last night it was a statement made. Last night we were talking about the transportation issue, how people could not get from here to there. And so TCM was being moved downtown as one of the reasons that you stated, because it would be accessible.
As a what? I'm sorry.
It would be, transportation accessible wise.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So basically, I guess hey, you don't want to hear about Era Johnson, but you're going to hear it.
No,
Era Johnson is
ma'am, I said I wasn't going to answer another question.
Tonight. No, here it is. But I'm going to have to say the word. That's what I'm saying.
That's fine, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So A.R. Johnson has been moved out to TCM. Talk about accessibility, right? So I'm saying that the students that we have here in the county, to my knowledge, how do I say this? Okay, so transportation. Okay?
Yeah.
Transportation has always been sort of an issue for Richmond County.
Yes, no doubt.
Okay? So in all the parts working, we have our babies that have been displaced because of homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
They have transportation to and fro school.
Right.
Okay? The magnet schools have transportation to their schools.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
With this that's taking place, when the statement was made last night that there are parents that had concerns about not being able to have their children in a magnet school, I'm saying, what is the issue that they haven't made? And it can't be transportation because we have transportation in those schools. So why is it an issue?
No. I think my comment went to the idea that not all students have individual personal transportation to schools. That's what I meant, is that not everybody can get in a car and get to these school buildings. Last night there was a comment made, we drive our kids to school. And I said, that's great for you, but it's not great for everybody. There are plenty.
Richmond County does supply.
They do.
The bus to go to magnet school. Yes.
So I was addressing the comment is that we take. That's how I was addressing that. Because you're exactly right. If we don't offer transportation, I think that would be detrimental to this district. Now, and so again, part of the idea on the transportation is, again, we talk about accessibility of programs that way certainly, but we also talk about the number of places you have to go to deliver an education model. And it's not just buses, it's your white fleet, it's your cafeteria, it's your food service supply, and it's all that. And so when you can get to your buildings to the right size and the portfolio you need and take some that you don't need online anymore, and reduce that, you reduce transportation and promote the idea that I don't need as many drivers so I can cover more routes. And so there's a whole domino to this, certainly. But my comment was, I want to make sure that every kid does have access. And transportation does continue for every child. If it's not, it's regressive. And no way we're going to go there because of what you just said. We have a lot of students at risk that don't have the means, that are homeless. So without that transportation system, but pay attention to my comment earlier. When school districts are in financial straits, I'm going to tell you, if it's happened once in my career, it's happened 1,000 times. The first thing that they look at is cutting transportation. And we can't do that here. And because that costs, I mean, it's $5 or $6 a mile now. Then the second thing they go to is the biggest one they can, which is staff. And so we're trying to avoid any of those that the district would have to go to. Right now, they're stretching their dollars as far as they can with that. But I'm going to tell you, I can't think of a district that wasn't their first two means of action to try to do that. And so I don't want that to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so to let you know, the first program that gets cut in this county has been fine arts.
That's a problem.
And it has not been bus drivers.
Well, no, you're right.
Transportation.
Yeah.
So I want to correct that so people know.
Yep.
It is the fine arts program that goes first.
Yep.
Even though we have a magnet school.
They will. I know. It just, and the domino starts.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So they don't cut transportation here.
Well,
okay.
And I'm glad they don't.
Okay.
I'm glad they don't.
All right. And last of all, You gonna say I'm tired of her?
No, I'm
Okay.
not. I'd never do that.
Think it. That's okay.
I don't even think it.
All right. Lateness in the buses, observation in some of the magnet schools. By living near the magnet schools, I do live near Davison, Johnson, and Walker.
Yeah.
And when I go to those, I don't see any lateness of those transportation of those buses. This is a statement.
Okay.
So that was one of the things brought up last night.
Okay.
And I want to give you that correction. Now, yes, the train will come. We don't know when the train comes.
I know, that's a
I
problem.
can go home now and the train be all around the track, and I'll be trying to figure out how to get home.
Yeah.
But this city is built around the trains.
Yeah.
And so that would be a commissioner meeting contest.
I'm glad you
So
got
for those people that want to know, once again, are you willing to go the upper mile with the tax bill going up to take the schools to where they need to do? You decide. Or you can have this.
Thank you for getting that on the record. So, okay.
So we'd like to thank all the parents that were able to make it, the principal, the folks that stayed for the facilities to keep the facilities open, the audio and visual crew. We will be meeting again tomorrow, as you can see, at Tut Middle School at 6 p.m. If you have any additional questions, any curriculum questions or program-related questions, the central office staff is here, and Tracy and the team will also be available. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.